Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Friday the 10th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio and all over the world on YouTube. Here's what we're going to be discussing probably throughout the morning.
The Prime Minister has unveiled plans to allow benefits to be put towards mortgages in England, but how did the speech go down with you?
Two British soldiers who have been captured by pro-Russian forces in Ukraine have been found guilty and sentenced to death in Moscow, as the families now ask for government legal support should the UK be ready to become more involved in this conflict.
And we're also going to be talking about National Carers Week. Do you have a family member or a friend who's doing an amazing job as a carer? Because we would love to hear your stories and your messages.
Yeah, we could give them a call out, couldn't we, and say hello and good morning and you're appreciated. That would be really lovely. Do get in touch. In any of our discussions too, send us your messages by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us @gbnews.
And of course, don't forget, if you want to watch on YouTube, it'd be good to have you with us online. And you can subscribe for free, and that way you get all the latest on the big stories that we're talking about every single day.
Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister attempted to reset his premiership with a speech in Blackpool in which he promised to tackle the tax burden and extend right to buy, amongst other policies.
Well, let's find out what the biggest talking points were with the Daily Express's political correspondent, Dan Falvey, who's here. Good to see you this morning.
Hi.
Look, what were the standout points for you?
Morning. Well, Boris Johnson gave this reset speech, and he really was hoping that after everything that's happened earlier this week with the confidence vote, that this would be the chance to move forward, tell people that he had a plan for government. As you said, there were several standouts. He had his housing policy. He said he wanted to extend right to buy and basically help more people get on the housing ladder. At the same time, he spoke about how is he going to deal with the cost of living. He said that he wanted to lower taxes. There was a broad range of policies that he announced, but the key for many people is going to be about, can he actually deliver them? He's given the talk, he said what he wants to do, but will he now put them into place?
Yeah, because most of them sound pretty long-term, don't they, strategies? I mean, the minute I heard about the housing idea, I thought Margaret Thatcher is the first thing I thought, you know, give council tenants the right to buy their own houses. But I thought that generally now, some 20 years on, that's thought to have been a problem because it took houses out of the rental market, out of the council housing market, and they were never properly replaced.
Well, the government said that they will replace them. Michael Gove was yesterday saying immediately. He was saying as soon as one's sold, they'll immediately have a new social house. And that's great in theory and in principle. Again, the question is, do they actually have the ability to do what they're promising? They're very popular on paper. I think everyone agrees that more housing is needed in this country. More needs to be done to help people get into affordable housing. But is this policy actually something that actually will work in practice?
I mean, what's interesting, Anne described this as strategy. It does seem to be strategy, doesn't it, rather than policy here, which is a problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Conservative MPs wanted after Monday was to see a bit of delivery now. They wanted to see the Prime Minister telling them exactly what can they do, that they can go to the voters when it comes to the next general election and say, this is what we've done. I think we didn't necessarily get that on Monday. We got a broad vision, but as you say, when it comes to actual policy, it was a bit light.
When are we going to get the detail, do you think? Is there any sign? Because the devil is going to be in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's exactly what Tory MPs are looking out for. They'll be looking and seeing what does the Prime Minister do in the House of Commons in the coming weeks and months. Does he start introducing bills that actually put this into practice? When it came to housing yesterday, government were very light on detail. They were very sketchy about exactly what were their plans, how many houses were they planning to sell. Had they actually spoken to lenders about how they were going to get on board with it? It seems that there's a lot of detail still to be thrashed out and a lot of people yet to be consulted, and that's what MPs will be looking to see.
Yeah, I mean, what struck me with all of this is it does seem to be... It was teased as the government dealing with cost of living, and yet the main policy we got was about housing, which is more levelling up, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I think you'd say that they're both priorities of voters. I mean, the 81% of people in this country say that housing is an issue. Everyone agrees it is something that needs to be done. In fact, just last year, a poll said that it's actually in a top 3 concern for an increasing number of people. So it is an area that people want to see something done on. I think cost of living is something that Tory MPs want to see more immediate action on. Boris Johnson did address it yesterday. He said that you can't tax your way to growth, and that is exactly what people want to see. They want to see lower taxes. They want to see him actually starting to do conservative policy.
Well, that's what his own, I was going to say backbenchers, but it's more than just the backbenchers. That's what the Tory party want him to do, is become a Tory Prime Minister.
Yeah. I think you heard a speech yesterday and many people were saying, that's fantastic, that's exactly what a Conservative government should be doing. But we've got a Conservative government.
Yes,
They could be
and they've been in there a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the front of the Financial Times, but this really left me aghast because, of course, Rishi Sunak was one of the people that was a close contender at one point to possibly be the next Prime Minister. The headline says Sunak lost £11 billion of taxpayers' cash in debt blunder, say economists. It's not the Labour Party throwing this at him. It's the National Institute of Economic and Social Research saying that he paid, on the money they had to borrow during the pandemic, he paid far too much interest and should have taken out insurance against that and thus lost £11 billion of our money.
I think when it comes to the pandemic, voters are still sympathetic that it was unprecedented. The government had to act however they had to act to get us through. And I think a lot of voters still do have sympathy, actually, with the delivery of the pandemic. Unfortunately, the consequence of that are that we've ended up with so much more debt. Something needs to be done about it. And I think voters are not so sympathetic to the consequences of that.
It's not just politics, though, is it? I mean, that's mathematics, that's financial mathematics that the Chancellor of the Exchequer should be able to have foreseen and didn't.
Well, I
mean, that's inexcusable, isn't it?
Again, I think when it comes to the pandemic, I think people will say there were extra costs, there were plenty of costs that people weren't expecting, but we'll forgive you, we'll let you off on that one. What they won't let them off for is things such as the national insurance rise, which is being done after the pandemic and is against what the Tories promised in their manifesto.
There's so many things, though, that I mean, the public are crying out for. And this is about winning the public back for the Prime Minister, isn't it, in order to keep his backbenchers happy. And on that front, it would be very easy to say, right, come up with some tax-reducing policies, tax-cutting policies, but primarily do stuff on fuel duty, green levy, all these sort of things, which actually could be done comparatively easily.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to fuel levy, the government is actually taking in more money because of the nature of the way the tax works. As prices have gone up, they're getting in more in tax receipts. They could make a cut and still be making what they made several months ago. And it would be very popular with the public, who are seeing now more than £100 to fill up the tank.
Yeah, and it's not very good, is it? I mean, so many people talking today in National Carers Week that there are carers and health workers who literally cannot afford to put petrol in their car to go and do their jobs. It's not a very good state of affairs, is it? He's got a lot of mopping up to do.
You look at the fact that he's got the price it is to fill up a tank. You then look at, we've had this week, problems with unions when it comes to rail strikes. It's not like people, as you can say, I can't use the car because it costs so much, but I'll jump on a train. Even the trains are not going to be running in the next couple of weeks. There needs to be solutions.
Yeah, there does. Well, let's hope we get some pretty quickly. Dan, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you're watching at the moment and you depend on a carer or are a carer and you're one of those people who literally cannot afford to put petrol in your car at the moment, the average car now to fill it up is £100.
100 quid. That's for a 55-litre tank, which isn't actually very big.
It isn't that big. No, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
We've had a lot of, over the last few weeks, quite a number of community nurses getting in touch, saying that what they can claim for their petrol allowance to do their job hasn't increased.
No, I bet it hasn't.
The price of fuel has, so they're now out of pocket just doing their job, which again can't be right, but then the NHS is going to say we can't afford to pay anymore. Anyway, get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'd love to hear your stories this morning.
Now, 2 Britons and a Moroccan captured by Russian forces in Ukraine have been found guilty of terrorist offences and sentenced to death in an unrecognised court in Donetsk.
Well, the government here has attacked the move, and the Foreign Secretary is looking at what if anything can be done. Paul Hawkins reports.
28-year-old Aidan Aslin from Nottinghamshire on the left and 48-year-old Sean Pinner from Bedfordshire on the right.
Aslin Aidan.
Along with a Moroccan man, all three sentenced to death by this court in Donetsk, a part of Ukraine occupied by Russian forces that is not internationally recognised. The charges read to them being foreign mercenaries, trying to seize power and terrorist offences. And this is where they were captured by the Russians, fighting for the Ukrainian army in Mariupol. Their families say as serving soldiers they're prisoners of war and therefore are protected by the Geneva Convention. Ukraine's former president is Petro Poroshenko.
This is the barbarian face of Russia. This is just a strong message which the whole world should send to Russia, that Russia has a zero jurisdiction on this territory.
Aidan Aslin is a former care worker who moved to Ukraine in 2018. The same year, he got engaged to a Ukrainian woman and joined the country's military. He'd previously fought with the Kurds in Syria against so-called Islamic State. Sean Pinner, meanwhile, is a former British soldier who moved to Ukraine 4 years ago, also marrying a Ukrainian woman and using his experience to train the country's military. His family say his 3-year contract was due to expire at the end of the year and he was planning to take up humanitarian work. Jason Fajulich spoke to us in April. He fought with both men in Syria.
I believe in the beginning they said if they found any foreign fighters that they would just treat them as terrorists, which unfortunately we know for Russia is execution on the spot. So we're lucky that these two are still alive. In fact, their social media presence has probably helped keep them alive. But as we see now, they are being used as a Russian mouthpiece for their propaganda.
The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has called it a sham judgment with absolutely no legitimacy. The British government has confirmed it's liaising with its Ukrainian counterpart to try and secure the men's release. And this man seen here with Vladimir Putin could be the key. Viktor Medvedchuk is a pro-Russian Ukrainian politician currently held on charges of high treason. Moscow has already suggested swapping him for the two British nationals.
Boris Johnson really does care, like he says he does, about British citizens, and he would help pressure Zelensky to do the right thing and return Viktor to his family and return us to our families.
The two Britons will appeal the sentencing, their fate now in the hands of diplomacy. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
That must be so terrible for their families to know that their lives are in such danger at the moment and they're such political pawns.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let's bring you up to date with the other headlines at 6:13, and the Labour Party leader will meet political parties in Northern Ireland today amid the row over the post-Brexit trading agreement. The DUP is refusing to form a power-sharing executive in protest against what's known as the Protocol. Sir Keir Starmer is expected to call for a compromise and negotiation to end the deadlock.
MPs have criticised the government's plans to burn £4 billion of unusable personal protective equipment. It can't be used because it doesn't meet NHS standards. The Public Accounts Committee has accused the Department of Health and Social Care of wasting 75% of the £12 billion it spent on PPE in the first year of the coronavirus pandemic due to faulty kits and inflated prices.
Child cruelty and neglect have gone up 25% in England over the last year. Police data gathered by the NSPCC shows what they're calling the worrying scale of abuse and neglect. They're urging the government to increase resources and support for child protection.
And in the United States, at least 3 people have been killed in a shooting incident in the state of Maryland. Local media reported the suspect opened fire inside a factory in the town of Smithsburg. The sheriff's office says they are no longer a threat, but the motive is not yet known.
14,000 new school places will be created as part of the government's levelling up plans. Up to 75 new free schools and 6 forms will open in 55 areas identified as needing education investment. The first will open in September 2025. going on with shootings in America?
So many. Well, we're reporting on every. I mean, they were almost. Well, they are daily, I think, aren't they, in America? And we're reporting in this country on them more now because of the terrible Uvalde shooting.
It's just so depressing.
It just gets worse and worse, doesn't it?
And then you get some of these people who then say, well, the solution, particularly with school shootings, the solution is more guns in school.
Well, I was watching the committee, the US committee on here, which was hearing testimony from all the various parents. One child actually gave testimony, and a lot of so-called experts. But what was really shocking was that there was one mum who stood up. She hadn't lost her son in the recent school shooting, but she'd lost him quite recently in a drive-by, by the sound of it. And she said she had been to so many funerals of young black shooting victims. And she said the solution is more guns. We need to teach the next generation how to use guns properly, how to use them responsibly. But her answer was to arm more people in schools. And she was a mum. Couldn't believe it.
I find it very difficult to get my head around.
I think we all do in this country, but it is a very deep social divide in the US, and it does seem to be very racially divided too. By far, the most people who are the victims of these school shootings tend to be black and tend to be in very neglected neighbourhoods. Wasn't true of that particular school, but it is generally so. It's a real huge problem. God only knows what the answer is.
Don't know. Politicians don't seem to want to move on it, do they? Oh, well, not enough.
But there's such
anyway.
deeply entrenched opinions about it.
Right.
Terrible.
Yeah. Now, it's 16 minutes past 6, and this week, as you know, is Carers Week, which is a national campaign aiming to raise awareness of caring and highlight challenges faced by unpaid carers across the country.
Yeah, the campaign also helps those who may not think of themselves as having caring responsibilities to identify as carers and learn more about the services that might support them.
Well, let's talk to Gina Awad, who's the author of United Caring for Our Loved Ones Living with Dementia. It's great to see you this morning. Look, do you think that there is enough focus on carers in the UK? We're very aware that they're there and they do a tremendous amount of work, but are they given enough credit and enough support?
No, they're not. I mean, it's very, very complex. I mean, the work that I do is sort of around dementia. So with regard to that, it's really, really complex. There isn't enough support out there. And we've got National Carers Week here, but, you know, we need to think about that every day. I see so many family carers struggle trying to, you know, support their loved one and also have a bit of a life where they can get, you know, that support and access to their friends and family. And it can be really, really challenging.
That so many people who are carers don't actually identify as such. They don't think of themselves in that way, so they're not claiming the benefits or the support and help that they need.
They don't, and there is a lot of controversy around the term carers because they want to see themselves as a husband, wife, or grandmother or daughter, and they don't want to term themselves as carers. But the reality is, if you don't term yourself as a carer, you can't get access to that support, and I think that's really important. So we need to just sort of forgo that word, if you like, and just get as much support as possible.
What is there actually for people?
Pardon? Sorry, I didn't hear that, Stephen.
What support is there available for people?
It depends. I mean, in the field that I'm sort of linked up with dementia, once the diagnosis happens, you know, there's the Alzheimer's Society, Alzheimer's Research, there's memory cafes for families, but often, you know, the family members will need to attend with them. So it depends on it's very much a postcode lottery. It really depends what's going on locally in the individual communities across the country.
Why you've written the book, to just sort of to make it clear to people who they are, whether they are carers or not, and what sort of help might be available.
Yeah, I mean, the book that I've written is a short book. So it only takes about an hour to read, but it follows 7 family stories, and it's illustrated by cartoonist Tony Husband. So there's a lot of images in there. And we actually launched the book last night in Exeter Library. There were about 80 people that attended, and we had some really good Q&A there. But, you know, people were sort of reaching out to us and saying, you know, we haven't got the support, or, for example, their family member is in denial about the dementia diagnosis. So, and I've sort of said it's really important to get that diagnosis, and then the support is out there for you. But the book is great because although it's a short book, there's a lot of resources at the back, so it will take you right to where you need to go to find the support, rather than finding it by default, because a lot of people have to find out things by default, like, for example, can they claim attendance allowance, which is not means tested, if the mobility is an issue, about blue badges and things like that. So there's so much available that people do not know about, and that's not on. It's just not good enough.
I guess one of the biggest problems, though, which carers themselves may find hard to take on board, is they're going to need some respite care at some point.
They are, and it's really difficult because there's often a lot of guilt around that. I mean, we've got around here in Devon, we've got a great project called the Philo Project. We've got Age UK in Exeter. We've got other sort of community support groups, but it's fairly limited, really. And people feel guilty if they think, oh, I need to get away for a couple of nights or whatever. It's who's going to be able to be with their loved one. It's such a challenge. It really is. And yeah, it's what do you say? What do you do? It's just, and then of course it gets to the point where if they can't sort of look after themselves, filling, from an empty cup, how can they support their loved one? And then we get crisis and burnout.
Is there an age limit on carers? Because I mean, I've done many reports in my time over kids who are carers, actually almost full-time carers. I mean, is there anything there for them?
There's young carers group. I don't know so much about the young carers group. I know we've got Devon carers that are based in Exeter and they cover Devon, and I know that they link up with young carers. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of sort of teenage children that are struggling with school because they need to support, their loved one, their mum or dad with, comorbidity. So maybe a couple of diagnoses, 2 different, medical conditions. So yeah, there isn't enough support, Anne and Steve. There really isn't enough support out there.
Oh, well, Gina, it's great to talk to you this morning.
Yeah, I was just going to say, before we leave you, can you remind us of the name of your book? Because I'll bet there are people watching at the moment who'll say, how do I get hold of it? Well, just remind us what it's called.
It's called United, Caring for Our Loved Ones Living with Dementia, by me, illustrated by Tony Husband. You can get it on Amazon, all good bookshops, and it really is worth a read. Thank you so much.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, Gina, thank you. Talked yesterday to an 18-year-old carer, actually, who cares for his dad, his sister and his brother.
Oh, God.
Do you know what an upbeat, nice young man he was?
Well, he will be a very nice young man, but he needs support. Was he getting any?
Yeah, well, yes. Action for Children were involved with him, but even so, I mean, what a tough job.
Yeah.
What a tough job. But, I mean, he was... Those people, he says he's sort of done it all his life.
Of course, unquestioningly too.
So it's just part of who he is. And do you know what? I think it could well make you a better person. It's just that burnout thing. Yes. Isn't it? Because
it makes you a better person, I can absolutely see that, but it doesn't mean you don't need support.
Oh, no, absolutely.
From the community, from financial support, but mental and emotional support, I would have thought too.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of hard work.
Do let us know if you're a carer or if you're somebody who actually doesn't want to be defined as a carer, but you still are. Maybe you need support, or maybe you're somebody who relies on that sort of care. I'd love to hear from you, particularly as we hear at the moment that carers who need to get around can't even afford to put the petrol in their car at the moment, since petrol is now so hugely expensive. If that's affecting you, do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear your story, but particularly say hi to you this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Don't go anywhere, though, because we've got plenty more to come for you, including the latest on buying a home with your housing benefits.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. It is 6:26. Good to have you with us today. Loads of you getting in touch, actually, this morning.
Yeah, particularly about this right to buy scheme, or whatever Boris is calling it, where he's going to... I think it sounds very like what Margaret Thatcher did in the 80s, was it? Giving people who are council tenants the right to buy their houses. In this case, it's people who are sort of like housing association tenants will be given the right to buy.
But it's the benefits
and
aspect
people on
of it all.
people on what do you call it? Thingy benefit.
Housing benefit.
No, not just
Universal
that, though. Universal credit, that's the one, yes. God, how could I have forgotten that? I would have thought if you're that hard up that you need universal credit, how will you be able to just sort of get a mortgage?
They're sort of saying you can use the benefits to sort of for your deposit and paying a mortgage rather than paying rent. But then, how do you save?
I would have thought you have other priorities if you're on universal credit.
It's very odd.
Tony in Bury St Edmunds says, "What is Boris talking about? Buying a house is not going to help anyone to put food on the table, heat your home, or reduce the cost of putting petrol in your vehicle. It's a total smokescreen from Boris. It's time he woke up."
Well, I totally get your point on the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, it's not going to help you immediately with the cost of living.
But if you get on the housing ladder, then that's obviously a good investment for you, and it ultimately is good for the country, long term. Anyway, but it's a bit of a strange one.
So is it a smokescreen from Boris? Is it just timed to try and get us past his only squeaking past the no confidence vote? I don't know.
Let's talk to someone who knows about this. When it comes to all things housing, Jeremy Leaf is the man you need to talk to, and he's here, thankfully. Good morning.
Steve.
What do you make of it?
Well, in theory, it's a great idea. A lot of people, my customers, people I speak to every day, think it's a great idea. They want to get on the housing ladder. They're seeing house prices go far beyond them. They want to own if they can. But it's the detail, exactly as you've just been talking about, is what people really want to know as well.
And are we any clearer on what the detail is?
Does any of it make any sense to you?
Well, I get the idea, and it's a very popular policy. But how is it going to be financed? The most important thing is not necessarily getting on the housing ladder, but how much you're going to pay. We need more homes. We need more homes to buy, to rent, as well as those people who are in between. Not everybody wants to buy.
Well, Michael Gove has promised that for every house that's taken out of the rental market, another one will be built, which is quite a big promise, isn't it? It would be nice to see if that works. Do you think that will work at all?
Well, you talked about Margaret Thatcher's policies in the 80s. We need to learn the lessons of what happened then.
Which were?
Which were not enough properties were replaced, maybe in the wrong area. We chose the more expensive, more valuable properties to sell off to finance the rest of the policy. Too many buy-to-let landlords were coming in and taking advantage of the scheme. The discounts in some areas were too high. and people weren't able to actually make the most of it.
In terms of those discounts, I mean, that's going to apply. I mean, you could be looking at what, 40, 50% off the price?
Well,
of the
that's exactly the detail we're looking for, Steve. You know, we actually want to know, is it going to work? It is a fine balance, and there just wasn't enough detail in terms of what's going on. But the most important thing to young people is raising that money for the deposit and keeping prices in check.
And who's going to provide the mortgage? If it's ordinary mortgage lenders, they're not going to be very thrilled unless they're subsidised, aren't they?
Well, this is the point. It's just rolling up the debt for longer and higher, and a lot of people will see through that. They won't be happy about it, and the lenders may not want to take on those sort of customers.
It's interesting when you look at the government's figures that they were pushing out yesterday. They were talking about, even by their own projection, selling 224,000 of these properties over 10 years.
Yes,
actually, that's not an awful
That's not
lot.
very much.
It's not very many, and this is what happened last time. When you drill down to actually the nitty-gritty, there's not there really much of a change, and maybe it is just looking at a new policy, but that's why it really, I think because of the political upheaval at the moment, I think it's even more incumbent upon the government to explain the policy in detail to make sure it actually works.
I mean, this will please some people, there's no doubt about it. People who just feel they could just about manage it and want to get on the property ladder. It's a very British thing to want to get on the property ladder, isn't it? And if Boris can actually just appeal to that amount of people, then he will have lifted himself up slightly in their regard. But it still leaves an awful lot of people whose housing problems are unsolved.
Absolutely. It's not just about buying. A lot of people want to rent, and a lot of people want the flexibility of being able to aspire to owning over a longer period, a shared ownership, getting on the housing ladder, not necessarily tomorrow, but maybe in a few years' time. And plenty of parents are saying to us, we just about managed to buy property, but how on earth are our kids going to be able to do so?
Do we need to look again at the rental market in all of this? There is private landlords do seem to be getting demonised a little bit. I can say that because I don't own any other properties, so you know it's. But they do seem to get demonised an awful lot. But the rents do seem to be very high. Is there a way of looking at this so we could maybe make rents more affordable and just more practical as an option?
Yeah, absolutely spot on, because what's happening in lettings is mirroring what's happening in sales to a large extent. There's not enough product, not enough properties. Rents are going up. A lot of landlords are feeling marginalised because of a lot of the policies which have come out. And it's always with all these things, as I said about the new extension of the right to buy, it's finding the balance, not getting rid of all these landlords because they do provide accommodation
they fill
to people,
gaps that the government doesn't.
But because there's a shortage, rents have been going up, and of course the vicious circle makes it even more difficult for tenants or aspiring buyers to save those deposits.
Do you think Help to Buy, when it was first brought in, whilst sounding good, and of course the headline sounds very good, Help to Buy, do you think it actually caused more properties to be sold at inflated prices? Because it felt like that to me. One of my sons was looking into it about 3 or 4 years ago, and it looked to me as though they were just sort of adding another 20 grand onto the price of a house and then saying it was Help to Buy.
Well, that's part of the problem. If you're only going to build in further house price rises, it's taking ownership even further away from the next level of people who want to get onto that ladder. And this is, if lenders are going to support it, they'll want to see that prices are still rising. We want to see more properties. In my daily round, people are asking, why can't we have more properties? We want to keep prices in check. And the main way of doing that is to build more, create more properties.
All that, I mean, another target's 300,000 a year. I can't help, every time we talk about it, I always think, where are they going to put them?
Yeah,
where are they going to put them? We're going to run out of land eventually.
Well, there's plenty of properties which are not used or underused. Empty properties, you know, properties above shops, lots of areas.
So what about legislation to make those affordable and turn them into housing?
Very much so. That is something. I mean, there are policies addressing that, but they're not working fast enough to create the supply that we need, particularly of the affordable homes to buy and to rent.
I mean, I'm sure it's all over the country, but in London there are massive great tower blocks of empty flats because they've been bought by people, often outside of this country, as just investments, and they're left empty.
Well, there's something in that, but some of the investors, don't forget, they're the ones who are financing the whole development and maybe allowing it to produce the affordable housing in the same scheme. So we can't guarantee necessarily they're going to live there. People do travel and live in different places.
What about this, I don't know what you call it now, sort of land grabbing or what have you, where developers buy a plot of land and then just sit on it and perhaps have no intention of building on it, but again, that's an investment in and of itself. There was talk about legislation to move against that, wasn't there? Did anything ever happen?
Well, it didn't really. The government carried out an inquiry into that. I think it was Oliver Letwin that chaired it. And the conclusion was that it wasn't so much of an issue. Certainly, I find in my area of working, it is an issue. And it doesn't come forward, but it doesn't always come forward to development because the developer is sitting on it. It could be that the infrastructure, maybe the roads or the schools or the lighting or the drainage, is not coming forward fast enough.
Yeah, it needs an awful lot of joined-up thinking.
Exactly, and that's it, because it's a longer term. You know, some of the larger developments which you're referring to, they may be 2 or 3 years in the making and take a long while to come to fruition.
One of our viewers this morning, Morning Edwin, says, I owned the largest Help to Buy company in Scotland before Help to Buy was stopped in Scotland. At the time, we could use benefits to obtain a mortgage for tenants, but I don't think it'll work in England. In England, higher deposits and, very importantly, lending criteria from banks will make it unlikely to allow benefit claimants to obtain a mortgage under the tightened rules after the crash in 2008, under responsible lending guidelines. Do you think he's got a point?
I think he has got a point. Again, we want to see what the detail is and will lenders take it on? Often it's those who are the lowest earners who are the most vulnerable buyers of properties, and those are the ones that the lenders don't always want to support.
So the message is, let's see the detail, Boris.
Let's see some more detail, Boris, and talk to the industry, because we very much want to help.
OK. Jeremy, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
If it tempts you, if you've been tempted by this whole scheme, you think it might be a chance to get your foot on the property ladder, get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah.
It's all about the detail.
Do stay with us, though, because we've got plenty more to come, including one of our intrepid reporters could be on your doorstep this morning, so do stay with us to find out.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.38 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. And as always, you've been getting in touch, which is what we like.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Tony in North Lincolnshire says, by encouraging people on benefits to buy their own homes, the government is encouraging them to buy homes they can't afford to maintain. More affordable social housing is the answer.
And yet, as Jeremy was saying, people do want their own house.
It's a very Tory thing to do, isn't it, to give people the chance to buy their own house?
Richard's got an interesting take. Says those on benefits and working, because obviously you get a lot of benefits if you're still working, but on a lower income. If they get a mortgage, you could take them off benefits, as their mortgage could be half of what they're paying in rent, and therefore don't need the extra help from the government as they got when they were renting.
Well, David, though, says, so, have I got this right? The government's new idea is to use my taxes to pay for someone else's mortgage. That can't be right. So, presumably, they can then sell the house and make a huge profit. Can someone pay my mortgage, please?
Interesting.
Everybody's got a different view on this, haven't
Yeah,
they?
I mean, and I totally get where David's coming from on that one. I do. But there's got to be some sense in it somewhere.
Just need more houses, and they need to be more affordable. The ones that are being built, to my mind, at the moment, you see them going up all over the place, don't you? The ones that are being built are incredibly expensive. Lovely, but very, very expensive and small.
I guess it depends where you live. I mean, some of the ones, there's still, you can still get a decent doer-upper in the northwest. Sometimes for like 40 grand.
Yeah, but is there the infrastructure around it? Is there a job anywhere nearby?
Well.
That's the only way to do it, I suppose, is you have to provide employers, you have to provide employment, and then all the infrastructure, and then the housing, and then it will work. But that requires, as we were saying, joined-up thinking, which governments just don't seem to be very good at joined-up thinking.
Well, nobody does these days, do they? You need a woman in charge for joined-up thinking. That's my thought.
Think?
I think...
That's an interesting one.
Do you know, it almost sounds like a job. I'm being deadly serious. When it comes to planning, it's sort of like the multitasking and connecting lots of ideas together. I generally think women are better at it than men.
Or do you need a cross-party committee?
I think that'd be too many cooks.
It would, wouldn't it? Anything that says the word committee sort of tends to be very long and drawn out and very expensive. Amy, what's the solution?
Yeah, don't know. Maybe you know, GBViews at gbnews.uk, please.
Shall we take a look
at... pass it on to number 10.
Yeah, they'd love that. Shall we take a look at the front pages today? And the Mirror, sentenced to death by Putin. The Mirror reports on the tragic case of those two Brits facing a firing squad at the hands of what we're calling a sham trial in Russia.
The Express reports on the right to buy story, saying millions will be given the chance to own their own home. Boris Johnson vowed to complete Margaret Thatcher's unfinished housing revolution.
Low-paid health and care workers are calling in sick because they can't afford the fuel to get to work. That's according to the Guardian front page.
Train drivers have voted to join the biggest rail strikes in a generation. That's in the Times. Unions considering working together to maximise disruption of joy.
Dear. We are now snoozing at 35,000 feet, says the Daily Star. The paper reports the boss of Wizz Air urging pilots not to use fatigue as an excuse not to work. The paper asks if anyone else sees the flaw in his cunning plan.
Yes. Let's go through the papers then in a bit more detail with author and academic Joanna Williams and broadcaster extraordinaire David Hamilton. Morning to you both.
Morning, morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joanna, let's kick off with this serious story in the Mirror, looking at these two Brits who've been sentenced to death.
This is a horrific story, is leading lots of the front pages this morning, and rightly so. It's the news that Sean Pinner and Aidan Aslin, two British people who'd gone over to Ukraine and been fighting for Ukraine against Russia, have been captured. We know that was a couple of weeks ago, but now they're being put up, as you rightly described it, I think it was in the Mirror there, as a sham trial. They're being accused of terrorism, of being paid mercenaries. Actually, I think that's untrue, because if you look into the background of these two people, they both have quite strong connections to Ukraine. One of them has a Ukrainian wife. They've lived in Ukraine for lengthy periods of time. It's not like they've just gone over there as these kind of hired thugs just because they have this bloodlust and enjoy killing. You know, they've got clear reasons and connections with Ukraine. You know, they've joined the fight alongside Ukrainian brothers in arms to try and help Ukraine. It's just awful. I mean, how terrifying the prospect of facing a firing squad.
This is a political move, though, isn't it? Because, I mean, ordinarily, it would not have been expected for these two, if you know, this sham court, just to be executed on the spot. Now, the fact that that hasn't happened seems to indicate that the authorities there are using it as some sort of bargaining chip.
I mean, that's the worry, and what's being talked about really in many of the papers is the extent to which this might end up leading to more British involvement or more Western involvement generally in the situation in Ukraine. And obviously that's something we've held off from doing so far. We've sent over lots of weapons, but we've not sent over NATO troops, or British troops have not been...
No, but we British have been very high profile in our support, probably the highest profile country in our support of Ukraine, and these two are Brits.
And it does make
And Russia's making a meal of that, aren't they?
I think this could dissuade more British people from being involved, but incidentally what he's doing breaks the Geneva Convention. So it's absolutely despicable.
Yeah.
You know, there are no words
Yes,
for
they're not guilty of war crimes at all, just of
No.
fighting for Ukraine.
Absolutely.
They are technically members of the Ukrainian army, aren't they? They're not,
Yeah.
they're not
And they were there before the war began. They've been there for quite a long time. As Joanna says, one of them planning to marry a local girl as well. I mean, it's just, what depths will this man plumb?
No.
It's just despicable. There's no other
But I do think you're absolutely right that this is nakedly political, and this is about Putin using whatever leverage he's got to try and get one over, essentially.
And what can our government
Britain.
do other than say we will not negotiate on this? We cannot. They are not guilty of anything.
No, it's very difficult because clearly nobody wants to see these two men killed, executed in this way. But the prospect of just sitting back and watching this unfold is also horrifying. But you're absolutely right. Where it leads to, other than this horrible escalation, is very, very difficult to see how this could play out.
Let's come right back to home, and we've been talking about it already this morning, fuel poverty.
Yes.
The fact that carers can't actually afford to put petrol in their cars to go and do their job.
That's right. That's the story on the front page of The Guardian this morning. And I don't know what petrol is like in your neck of the woods, but in mine, it's fast approaching, I think, £2. And of course, diesel,
really?
even more. So,
Is it really?
yes, nearly 2, and I think it will. I mean, where's it going to end? You know, what is it going to get to? And as you say, health workers, health visitors, care workers, social workers, all struggling to get to work. I mean, nobody would take the car out now for a day trip to the seaside, would they?
No.
That's all out of the window now because people are even struggling to get to work. And then there's going to be a train strike. I mean, you know, and we can't get out of the country because the planes aren't
But
flying.
this is why I don't understand why the government isn't taking more action on things like fuel duty, which
Yes.
provide immediate, because then people will be tempted to go out to the seaside and spend money and all that sort of. It's
Well,
good for the economy.
fuel duty, by the way, if you put £100 worth of petrol in your tank, which you can, more than that, but if you put
Average
100,
ordinary car takes
yeah,
£100.
and the fuel duty is over £29. So, you know, they could cut that, couldn't they? I mean, come on.
Plus VAT on top of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
I mean, every time petrol goes up, the Rishi Sunak, the Exchequer, are taking in substantially more money from the VAT and from these levies. And I think it's immoral. I think there comes a point where when you've got carers not able to afford to get to work, I think it becomes a real moral issue where you have to cut the
Yeah,
VAT.
the problem too is that when the price of petrol goes up, everything goes up because everything is delivered by road. So all prices go up. You know, the price of petrol going up is the very worst thing that can happen.
And if trades unions are beginning to join together and we're going to face a summer of discontent, let alone a winter of discontent, because there are going to be strikes all over the place, we're not going to be able to get anywhere or get anything.
No, that's right.
All you can do is laugh.
Can't even leave the country.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
John, let's have a look at the Express and this right-to-buy scheme that we've been talking about, which is, you know, potentially good news for a lot of people. However, we are light on detail.
No, absolutely, and I think it's that detail which is really at the heart of this. You know, how this is going to play out. I get the aspiration to want to own your own home, and I think that's a positive aspiration, and I think it's something which Boris Johnson is really tapping into, something there that people do want this, but I'm just not convinced that this is the solution at all for so many reasons. I mean, for one thing, what I'm struggling to understand is most mortgage lenders would expect you to have a reasonable deposit in order to be able to get a house. Whereas my understanding of the benefit system is that if you're sitting on thousands of pounds in the bank, then you're not going to be able to get benefits. You wouldn't qualify for benefits in the first place. So those two things just seem to cancel each other out.
Well, they also want you to have a job to get a mortgage, and obviously
if you're on universal credit, the likelihood is you haven't got a job.
No, absolutely. I mean, there seems to me two fundamental problems here. One, you've been talking about throughout the course of this morning, that there are just not enough houses. I mean, that's the bottom line. You can't solve a housing crisis by tinkering around with little schemes in this way. You have to build more houses. That's the only thing that's going to bring the price of property down, actually building more houses. And the other thing then is why are wages so low that people in work need benefits to top up their wages. If you're working hard, if you're going out there, you're putting in the hours, you should be able to earn enough money to feed your family, you know, to have a life, sustain yourselves without the need for benefits to top that up.
David, can I say, you're looking perky this morning.
Am I?
Which is a relief, because you are at work.
I'm quite surprised you had me back after the last time I was on.
You were a bit naughty last time. But look, what are we meant to do if we have fatigue at work, according to the Daily Star?
Well, this is extraordinary, isn't it? This is the front page of the Daily Star, and it's the boss of Wizz Air who has urged pilots not to use fatigue as an excuse to work. So that means we can have fatigued pilots. Is that OK? I mean, surely fatigue is the very worst thing that could affect pilots, isn't it? Is there a better excuse that a pilot could have than I'm tired?
I suppose they just pop it on autopilot when they're up there, do they?
No, but they have a co-pilot. It's funny because while you were away, I was interviewing somebody about how to take power naps.
Yeah.
And power naps can be just 30 seconds or a few minutes. And she said even aircraft pilots should do it. As long as they've got a co-pilot, they should actually just go for 15 minutes or so into a power nap state.
What we used to call 40 winks.
That's 40 right, winks. 40 winks, Sitting in your chair, you do it sitting in your chair, so you don't completely conk
40
out.
winks,
But as long as you've got a co-pilot.
I usually have that in the middle of my show.
What, you put it on a long record?
Or maybe it's the listeners who have it, I'm not sure.
I'll tell you what, you wouldn't. If they left the comms on and you heard them snoring away when you
that would be very worrying, wouldn't it?
Be a bit worrying, wouldn't it, really? But anyway, don't worry about it too much, because hardly any planes are flying, so, you know, it doesn't really
honestly,
matter.
this feels like, you know, recession talk almost, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. I mean, anybody would think that turning the global economy off for 2 years would mean you could just hit start and everything would get going again. I mean, sadly, I think a lot of these things were predictable when you try and cut off global supply chains.
And maybe therefore unavoidable?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to try and get some nice, light, bright, funny, happy stories when we come back a little bit later. Otherwise, all our viewers and listeners are going to be
so depressed.
Yes, very depressed. But, you know, we have to tell it like it is. But we will try and come back with something a bit more cheerful for you.
Yeah, jolly good. I think that we need to work on that, absolutely.
Joanna, David, thank you. Work harder. Now, I'll tell you what, we will lighten things up for you, because it's time for On Your Doorstep.
So, yes, indeed, it's time now to find out whether one of our intrepid reporters have turned up on your doorstep this morning.
Yeah, let's head over to Glasgow then, and Davy Donaldson. Morning, Davy.
Yeah, good morning. I'm here in Glasgow's leafy West End, beautiful part of town, I have to say. Just going to have a knock on a door here and see who we've got going about. So we'll find out who we can speak to. Nice arch, lovely. So we're just going to have a knock on this door and see who's available. Are they in? Oh, good morning, sir. Good morning. What's your name?
My name's Andy.
Andy?
Andy Ritchie. And
what do you do?
I work for a company called Performance Breathworks, and we focus on how to help people manage stress.
And in what type of stress are we talking about? Because obviously we're all facing a lot of issues at the moment.
Well, yeah, there's a whole range of different things where we focus on helping people from an athletic perspective with exercise stress, but more and more often now what seems to be happening is it's things like the cost of living that's causing people a lot of stress, and they're coming to us for some simple techniques that can really help with that. A whole other variety of different things helping people with sleep and the pandemic and everything that brought on, but certainly more recently this cost of living issue has been really, we've noticed it with a lot of people coming through our doors, concerned about stress as a result of it really, so we just try to equip them with some helpful techniques to manage that.
How much of an increase have you seen with regards to cost of living, people coming to you with that kind of stress?
Over the past, I would say kind of 2 to 3 months, it just seems to be increasing more and more gradually every week almost, whether it's the corporates that we're working with, even some of the sports teams we're working with and individuals, it seems to be on their mind all the time, which is why some of the techniques that we're using with them seem to be more and more essential, really. But yeah, it's definitely been a new issue that seems to be affecting a lot of people, as I'm sure everyone's kind of well aware, myself included, because it's affecting absolutely everybody, but it's certainly, we're noticing it from the business perspective as well.
And the pandemic will have a huge bearing on that. We've all suffered stress during that time, and now, as you say, cost of living as well. So do you think stress has become more prevalent in society now?
Well, I think it was always there. Stress was always a massive, massive issue, even before the pandemic hit, and it never really got spoken about, whether that was from the corporate sector, whether that was, we see it in schools, and just with individuals coming through the door. But more often now, it seems to be coming to a point where people are really struggling to manage with stress. There's just coming in from all angles, and that's why it's very helpful to be able to give people some simple techniques that can help with that. But yeah, definitely there's a variety of issues that are causing people a lot of stress, and they just need a little bit of help with it,
Andy, thanks for joining us on GB News.
Thanks so much.
There we go. Andy Ritchie, obviously, who helps people deal with stress. We're all feeling it at the moment. Yesterday I was talking about fuel going through the £2 a litre barrier. We've all got the bills we're having to deal with as well. So certainly we need people like Andy who can help us make us feel that little bit better as we go about our daily jobs.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? David, thank you very much indeed. And don't go anywhere, we've got plenty more to come, including talking about tattoos. Do you show them off or do you have to hide them for work?
And would you call one of your children
Oh, yes.
Doxter, Ektor, Poang or Calax?
Oh, absolutely. Why not?
IKEA think you will.
Yes, let us know what you think. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A bright start for many of us, but a breezy start, and that wind will pick up further during the rest of the day with showers developing. Those showers will be frequent and heavy for Scotland and Northern Ireland near this low pressure. This is an unusually deep area of low pressure for the time of year. We don't often see this sort of thing in early June, so unseasonably strong winds expected during the rest of the day and into tomorrow. Also, a few showers around first thing. East Anglia, southern England sees 1 or 2, but the most frequent showers will develop across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Heavy at times with hail and thunder in places, and that strengthening wind. A breezy day for many of us, but the wind strongest across exposed coasts of western Scotland, reaching gale force here, 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Feeling cool where that wind is at its strongest, but further south and east, a reasonably warm day, still the potential for low 20s, even 24 Celsius in London, and staying mostly dry with sunny spells here. Clearing skies in the south and the east overnight. Further showers perhaps for parts of Wales and western England, but again, the most frequent showers or more prolonged rain for parts of Scotland, especially towards the northwest. And again, a blustery night to come. But of course, that will keep the temperatures up, so a relatively mild start to the weekend. And again, another bright start for central and eastern parts of the country. Quite quickly, the cloud will build and we'll see further showers developing. I think more showers to come across Wales, central and northern England compared to Friday. And a stronger breeze, that breeze bouncing over the hills of Wales and northern England. But the strongest winds, the most frequent showers, will again affect Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it will feel a bit cooler as a result. Sunday looks a little less windy, a little less showery, but still some blustery showers around, sunshine in between them. Monday, on the whole, looks like an improvement with, for many, a drier and calmer day.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
on TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 10th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK on your TV and your radio. And this is what we're talking about for you this morning.
The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has unveiled plans to allow benefits to be put towards mortgages in England. But how did his speech go down with the public?
2 British soldiers who've been captured by pro-Russian forces in Ukraine have been found guilty and sentenced to death. As the families now ask for government legal support, should the UK be ready to become more involved in the conflict?
And we'll be joined by Labour MP and Shadow Minister for Levelling Up, Alex Norris, to discuss whether he thinks the government are doing enough to ease the cost of living crisis.
So, of course, we want to hear from you about all of this and indeed anything else you want to talk about. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet us as well if you so choose. @GBNews is the address there.
And you can, I nearly forgot, you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube. I was on another planet. To get all the latest on the big stories that everyone's talking about, don't forget, if you're watching us on YouTube, to love us or, press the little heart thing.
Love us. You love us.
Love us.
Why not?
And subscribe, because it helps. Honestly, I'm so sorry. I was on another planet then, because during the news, we had a quick look through some of his wedding photographs, and they're so lovely, and I was just thinking about them.
Oh, were you?
I was transported.
Were you?
Yeah.
Transported up to the lakes. That's not a bad
How's
place.
married life going?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Glad
3
to hear
weeks
it.
and a day in.
Is that right?
Better be going well.
That's quite a long time now, then.
Yeah, but no, it's all lovely. Thank you. Lovely. Very, very nice. Very, very happy. And I'm happy that you're keeping us company this morning, including Fergus. And if he sent this picture in, which I haven't seen yet, there he is. Kitty watches every morning.
Oh, that's lovely.
He's back to the telly. There you go. If you're on the radio,
He's turning
you
his
can
back on.
imagine.
Yeah,
But there you
absolutely.
go. At least he's near the screen. That's all you need.
But we do love to see how you're watching us at home, and whether we're in a television in the corner with a plant pot on our heads, or nowadays I suppose it's all these big widescreen TVs.
And we should say, shouldn't we? We often read messages from Aussie Beth.
Yes. Oh yes, Aussie Beth. Good morning.
She sent us a card.
Good evening.
A card from the village of Urunga, and she's written a lovely message. She's actually called Maxine Miller.
Yeah, she calls herself Aussie Beth, but actually it's Maxine. And good evening, Maxine, if you're watching. I hope
in
you
New
are.
South Wales. Sent us a lovely note on the 15th of May, which has just reached us. But thank you very much. That's really lovely. So that's why we put it on the desk this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice to... I mean, usually most messages are digital nowadays, aren't they? But it's lovely to actually get a card. Paul has got in touch, though. He said, I'm just watching you. Good stuff. But I bet your intrepid reporter is not on my doorstep because I'm working in Singapore at the moment, but I live in Australia. Great work. Love watching the UK news from you guys.
Oh, now, you see, that would be an assignment. Send Davey to New South Wales or somewhere. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Loads and loads and loads of people getting in touch on the
About
right
housing.
to buy thing. CJ says we do not need any more housing. We need less people in this overpopulated country.
Diane says there's been a pilot run on this, under 200 homes in Birmingham. Demand was greater than the size of the plot.
Sue says, we all get the idea, but how would it work? We have people working 2 jobs who can't afford to buy a home. Private landlords' rents are extortionate. They're just not affordable to most.
And that's the problem, I think. If you're paying rent, how are you meant to ever be able to save up enough for a deposit so that you can get on the housing ladder and then pay off a mortgage, which would actually be less than the amount of rent you're paying? It's like a catch-22 situation, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I'm always astounded. I've got quite a lot of my sort of colleagues and former colleagues rent in London. Now, I don't live in London. I know London is very expensive.
Very.
But the amount of rents they're paying for like a 1-bedroom flat is way more than I pay in my mortgage, considerably more than I pay for my mortgage.
But that's the trouble, and that's why a lot of young people are going to the bank of mum and dad and asking for help with the deposit, because if they can actually get a deposit paid and a mortgage, it would work out far less than a rent. But it's getting that deposit together, and nowadays the mortgage providers are asking for massive deposits.
Yeah, we also say it's Carers Week.
Yes.
And seeing how that plays out with cost of living crisis. Sharon says, my son is autistic and I'm his carer. Taking him for a drive for a couple of hours a day is his joy.
Oh.
It's the only thing I can do to make him happy. I'm really struggling to afford it, though. Millions of mums with autistic youngsters take their kids for a daily drive, so it must be something that really helps.
They do, yeah.
But this is going to stop soon because of the cost. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
Well, when the report came out yesterday that it's now more than £100 to fill the average family car with petrol, that is unbelievable. I mean, if you'd said that a year ago, we wouldn't have actually taken it seriously. Archie says, I was a carer for 3 family members, one in a wheelchair with cancer, one with dementia, and another with motor neuron, that took 30 years out of my working life from 21 to 51. That's 3 family members who needed him. He said, I live on my own now. I was never able to go out and meet anyone during the time I looked after my family. That's how tough it is for some carers at the moment, and now they can't even afford to fill their own car with petrol to be able to go out on one of those essential drives.
Something
it's
just
terrible.
needs to be. Something really needs to be done. So, you know those the pay at pump things. You see, I tend to do that. I just think it's quicker and all the rest of it. I can't do it on my car with one thing. I've got to do it and then take the card out, put the card back in.
That's ridiculous.
And top it up again because it's a £99 limit or whatever. Very expensive.
It is, but you do a lot of driving.
I do a lot of driving. I know it is costing me a fortune. But what can you do? I've got to get to work in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
And there's no strike or no strike. There's no trains coming from where I live down to London at the time I have to travel.
I just can't believe we're in the same situation. I just sort of remember the headlines from like the 70s when I was a kid. And it seemed that everybody was on strike. The rubbish was piling up in the streets. They were calling the army in to do the dustman's job. And it was just... And we were on a 4-day week and I actually had to do my homework by candlelight. And it's almost as though this is going to happen again. You can't believe it's happening now in the 21st century.
Let's hope something gets done about it. Well, it has been a turbulent week for the Prime Minister. It started with him surviving that vote of confidence, came to an end with a speech in where he promised to tackle the tax burden and extend right to buy amongst other policies.
Well, joining us now to discuss whether the speech was a success is Associate Director of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, Helen Barnard. Hello there, Helen. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So were you impressed by the speech, and do you think this will get Boris out of the doldrums he's been in for such a long time?
Good morning. Well, it was a bit of a damp squib, wasn't it? It was billed as a cost of living speech, but actually what we got was 2 or 3 pretty minor housing policies, and that was about it, apart from something a bit weird about bananas and olive oil. So I can't see it being a game changer, to be honest, either politically or for the people who really need help with housing costs. And obviously we know that's quite a big part of the cost of living challenge, is people trying to pay really high rents and then not having the money to cover other essentials because they're trying to keep up with the rent.
There's a lot of pressure on him at the moment, and he's wanted to come out with something quickly to show that he is, you know, these issues are not passing him by. Is that why this has happened, do you think? He's saying, look, we've got a strategy, we are going to look at this, but we are just going to have to wait a couple of weeks, maybe a bit longer, to get some concrete policies in place.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure they do have a strategy at the moment. So we've had a cost of living package a couple of weeks ago, which was very good, actually. It came late, but it was well designed, but it's all temporary. What I think we haven't seen is what is the long-term strategy? So how are we going to make it so people are in better quality jobs that are more secure, that pay better, so it's easier to keep up with essentials? And on housing, the big issue is supply, to be honest. What we've seen is that this is another set of pretty minor policies. These are not going to be big game changers, but they are pumping up demand for housing even more whilst doing nothing for supply, which means that potentially they just, if they have any effect, they push up house prices a bit more. But actually, this kind of thing about using benefits to get a mortgage, that might help a few people. But most people on benefits are on very low incomes. That's why they're on benefits. So they can't build up savings for a deposit. Even if they got access to some of these deposit schemes, it's not going to help that many. And actually, it doesn't deal with the real affordability issue, which is if you're on a low income, you've got very little headroom. So if you lose some hours at work or your costs go up, you are potentially very quickly in trouble. So either mortgage companies look at it and say, look, these people are high risk, we don't want to lend, or they're kind of pushed into lending, and you suddenly get quite a few people in a pretty risky mortgage situation, which sounds worryingly like before the financial crash. I think there's a fairness issue too. You've got, 2.5 million people now are homeowners in poverty. They don't get help with their mortgage. So either we're extending it to them, which actually will be quite good, but is really expensive, or you're giving help to first-time buyers that you're not giving to any of the existing homeowners on the same benefits. And I'm not sure that that really feels fair or logical.
I mean, Labour sort of dismissed the announcements as back-of-the-envelope policies or envelope policies. Do you think they were just a sort of cynical, cheap move for good headlines and, let's just pull something out of the hat that will be easy and quick and appeal to our voters? Or do you think there's a genuine need or a genuine desire to help people who can't afford at the moment to buy their own homes?
I mean, I think there is a genuine desire, absolutely. I just don't think that these policies in any way match up to it. And I think it is, seeing the right to buy for housing associations. Now, that is a policy that's been around for quite a long time. I think, again, though, what we've seen in the past, what we've seen from the trials that were done, is the big issue is that, well, for a start, far fewer people wanted to take it up than they thought would, again, because people are in a really financially difficult situation if they've got access to housing association homes. But actually replacing them has been the big issue. So, right to buy was really successful for a while, but it petered out and stopped helping people get into home ownership because they never replaced the properties that were sold off. So here they're saying we will replace them, but we have heard that many times before. When they did the trials, it turned out it was really hard to replace them. And they are not putting the money on the table to either expand the supply of low-cost rented homes, which we need, or to then replace them as well. And without the investment, I'm afraid this policy is just going to sink yet again, as it has every other time it's been proposed.
case with these sort of issues, we as the media, we as the public, we want a simple solution. We do say, right, you need to provide us with an answer to this. How do we sort it out? And what seems ever clearer is that there is no simple solution to this, to the housing numbers, to the skyrocketing prices that we're paying for homes and rents and all the rest of it. There's no easy solution.
There's no easy solution, but there are definitely solutions. So, for instance, if we're thinking about why are so many people in work and yet can't afford the essentials, it's because a lot of them are stuck in low-paid but insecure jobs. Now, we had a solution that we've been promised for years, which was the employment bill, which would increase workers' rights at the bottom of the labour market and start getting them into a more secure position. That was dropped this year from the Queen's speech, but we could bring it back. That's one solution. The government actually does need to build more social housing, but actually also buy up some of the homes that end up in the private rented sector, but are not very good quality, owned by people who are not really equipped to be good landlords. If the government starts actually getting into the business of buying up those homes, of developing areas, and of providing more housing, then you start to actually give people real solutions. And we need to, change the way we tax housing wealth so that it becomes less attractive to speculate on rising housing prices. Because at the moment, house prices are just too high, basically, and everything they do is all about pumping up demand, which pushes them higher. What they need to do, actually, is bring housing costs down, and that needs to be seen as a good thing to do. And so far, we aren't seeing any of those things. We're kind of seeing pretty minor tinkering at the edges, rather than getting to grips with the big long-term drivers, which are causing not just this year's problems, but problems for years.
There's that old adage that the way out of a recession is to build. Build, build, build your way out of a recession. Would that still work?
Yes, so, you think about if you want to recapture the spirit of Macmillan, and when did we last have really big mass house building? It was back then, and the government has to play a big role. And yes, so, we were saying a year or two ago, the cost of borrowing is very low, so let's borrow, let's build homes, because the Prime Minister was right to say that we are spending a lot on housing benefit, going straight into private landlords. That is not good value for the state or for tenants. But the way out of it is to build homes and to get more low-cost social homes so people can get into them and save for a deposit and bring down house prices so you can get onto the housing market. But you're right, the central thing is they have to build and buy as a government, and they need to be willing to put the money into that. And that's the bit we haven't seen.
So do we need to take some of that away from the big housing development companies? Because there's about 10 in this country, isn't there, that control a vast swathe of the new property market. Do we need to take it away from them?
Well, I think stimulating more house builders, so stimulating a more diverse market, is definitely part of what we want to see. So getting smaller house builders able to build again, so it's not just the big boys playing, but actually also things like there's land banking, where developers have land but they're not building on it. We need stronger powers, actually, to get them to build on that land or to be able to take it off them again. We need to get, the government needs to step in as a kind of planner, actually, to say, look, we have a development, we're going to plan it, we're going to get the land, we're going to bundle it up into small plots, we're going to build out fast. And actually getting those really fast build-out rates is one of the things that governments and local authorities have in the past been very good at doing, but haven't done for the last decade or two.
Sounds like a plan to me. To you?
Yeah, it does. It does. So you advising the government.
I wish.
And if not, why are they not talking to people like you?
They are. So they're talking to a whole range of people. I think they have been told all of this, but I think it is about political will and it's about concentration on the big issues. And I think we need to see a bit more of that.
Okay. Helen Barnard from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation.
Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, very good to talk to you. Thank you.
So there are solutions out there.
Well, and that sounded like a plan, as I said. It sort of sounded a lot better than what we're hearing at the moment. I don't know. What did you think? Love to hear your views. GB views at gbnews.uk. What did you think of what she just said? Sounds like a plan to you?
Now, 2 Britons and a Moroccan captured by Russian forces in Ukraine have been found guilty and sentenced to death in an unrecognised court in Donetsk, the Ukrainian territory held by pro-Russian rebels.
Yeah, the family of one of the soldiers, Aidan Aslin, has called for the UK government to intervene before he's killed.
Well, let's talk to former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram. Morning to you. I mean, look, this is a grim situation. These two have, I mean, they've confessed, which, you know, doesn't stand for a lot, but of being sort of insurgents and terrorists, haven't they? They were actually working, as far as we understand it, properly within the Ukrainian army.
Yeah, they had joined the Ukrainian army before the Russian invasion. They're living in Ukraine and have been for a while. And the Russians will have tortured a confession out of them. This is a war crime. They are subject to the Geneva Conventions. There is no doubt in that whatsoever from the international community's perspective. And what Putin is doing through this show trial is just trying to put pressure and use these individuals and their families as pawns and terrifying them in the process.
Isn't one of the ideas that maybe they're doing this in order to facilitate some sort of a prisoner exchange?
Possibly, but there's other ways of prisoner exchanges without them overtly breaking the Geneva Conventions. You know, the fact that they put them on trial contravenes the Geneva Conventions. If they then go ahead and execute them, which I don't think they will do, but that's another level. And the prosecutors and the lawyers in this case, their names will be known publicly. So they will be on the arrest lists by the international community once this is all resolved. But that's a minor thing. They're using terror as a tactic to try and put political influence into the UK and into Morocco, and to try and fracture political resolve across the EU and the rest of the world. And unfortunately, these individuals are those pawns in that game.
Well, we talk about these individuals and we've got to remember them and we've got to remember their families. But even with all that in mind, should the UK government get embroiled in this? Should they try to intervene or not? Do they play the game or not?
Well, they have to intervene. And this is the sort of thing where I'm surprised that the Russian ambassador to London has not been called into the Foreign Office and given a formal warning about what would happen if they do execute them, and a formal warning that they have broken the Geneva Conventions. I think what this will do will be to stimulate the resolve that there is amongst those Western countries that are supplying weapon systems into Ukraine, and possibly push the supply of those weapon systems even faster. The issue is in getting the weapon systems in and the more sophisticated ones, is being able to train the Ukrainian troops in their use in time to get them into the front line. And that's the balancing act that we're in at the moment. But whilst all of that's going on, we've got not just the three individuals, but their families as well, who are living in terror.
What is the diplomatic play then? What will happen next? You say you're surprised that the Russian ambassador hasn't been called into the Foreign Office. What are we going to do about it? What happens next?
Well, unfortunately, there's not much more than you've been able to call the Russian ambassador in, and that to happen across a number of different states in the world, formal statements in the United Nations, and stiff letters delivered in Moscow. That's the sort of diplomatic piece that's in there, with potentially increasing sanctions even more if we can increase them even more. And then it's the military pressure. It's giving more capability to Ukraine as fast as is physically possible. And I understand the United States last night announced even more weapon systems being deployed in. And I'm watching military supply aircraft after military supply aircraft flying into airports very close to the Ukrainian border, delivering huge quantities of weapon systems on a daily basis.
Is it fair to say with all of this that if you are British, whether you're actually, as these two have been, in the Ukrainian army properly, or whether there's some of these British people who've gone out just to fight alongside, are they likely to be specific targets now because they do have this political influence now, should they be captured?
Yeah. Well, if we remember all those months ago when Liz Truss turned around and said that British fighters should go and fight for Ukraine and foreign fighters should go in, commentators like myself were turning around saying, we have to be really careful about this because the Russians will try and capture people, and when they do, they will parade them and use them as pawns to try and put pressure back onto families and political pressure back on. And this is unfortunately exactly what we're seeing. and therefore all of the foreign fighters are a prize target.
But it's actually illegal, isn't it? It's against the Geneva Convention. However, Russia appear to be saying, well, this is all happening in the sort of Republic of Donetsk, which makes it different, where the law is different.
Well, yes, but then we've got statements where Russia had said the Donetsk region and the Republic of Donetsk was now part of Russia. They're playing a game here. It's a big information game that they're trying to do to put pressure on things from a political perspective. But Russia has been continuously committing war crimes. The shelling of civilian populations, the shelling of hospitals, not targeting purely military targets are all war crimes. So they've just added another one or two to the list.
It's always good to get your analysis. Thanks very much indeed.
Deeply cynical, isn't it? And it must be awful for the families involved. Absolutely terrifying.
I imagine.
However, let's move on to something rather a little bit more uplifting. Literally, two brothers from Norfolk have they've discovered a sunken warship that sank over 340 years ago.
Ah, it's phenomenal. It's hoped that the contents of the HMS Gloucester will help shine a light on British maritime history. Our East of England reporter Ed Crawford reports on what they're calling Norfolk's Mary Rose.
From the Norfolk coast, these are the first images of the Gloucester made public. The secrets of the Gloucester have been hidden under Norfolk's waters for hundreds of years until now.
I could just see looming in the distance big black shapes, shadows if you like, on the seabed. Boomf, really excited, obviously wreckage, and literally by another 4 or 5 metres I'm kneeling on the seabed looking at this amazing shipwreck, just in awe. What was so nice is on the day we found it, Dad was out there as well, with us, so all three of us together.
The brothers couldn't be sure whether they'd found what some are calling Norfolk's Mary Rose.
Well, we were both inspired by the Mary Rose. As youngsters we saw them lifting the hull, and that always stuck in our mind, and I think that's what led us towards looking for older shipwrecks. I mean, there was certainly a moment heading back in of, wow, this could be the Gloucester. We still need to 100% identify it, and it felt like we found her. But it is what next? It is a light bulb moment. There's lots more to be done, and because we're the only people at that particular moment in time who knew where she was. Very, very special. Divers' dreams.
The brothers spent 4 years and covered thousands of nautical miles to find the Gloucester, but a key moment came with the discovery of the ship's bell.
I saw in the distance just a curved shape. Instantly just knew this is, you'd had a double look at it, and you're kind of trained for, your mind's trained to look for these curves, and instantly knew it's the bell. And Julian was disappearing into the gloom, swimming past the bell. I'll try to stop saying that. He was disappearing into the gloom. I just grabbed his fin, got him back, and I was so relieved. And then we just shared the moment together.
The brothers have discovered many rare objects, and the discovery of the Gloucester has academics and historians excited about what might be next.
The artefacts that are being rescued are unparalleled in their diversity and in terms of their richness. As a royal vessel with very significant political individuals travelling in style, this offers us a time capsule of how that travel took place.
From childhood dream to reality, the Barnwell brothers have found the Gloucester and thus written themselves in the annals of history.
Two brothers from Norfolk discovering a piece of national history. How does it feel?
Wow, it has been a strange build-up because we've kept it to ourselves and close circle of friends for so long, and to tell the world about it now and the nation is just wow, and it's just, as I said earlier, a diver's dream, and it's so nice to be sharing it. But this is just the beginning of the journey, and there's a lot more fun to be had.
This may well turn out to be Norfolk's Mary Rose, but only time will tell if this 17th century ship can be salvaged from the sea. This is Ed Crawford for GBNews.
Oh,
just phenomenal.
Look at that. Didn't that look fantastic? Beautiful Norfolk coast. Oh, I'm not getting my words right today.
Not today.
No.
It doesn't matter.
You don't have to agree with me.
No, you sound perfect. I tell you what, though, I mean, all the fuss there's been over the Mary Rose because it was so amazing.
Astonishing.
If this could be even better. Can you imagine? That'd be a project going on for years now, but it'd be sensational. Look, stay with us. We've got plenty more to come, including all the sport for you with Paul Coyte, so don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is 7:30 on the nose. Time to have a look at the biggest sports stories. And Paul Coit is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sir.
Morning.
Good morning.
What have you got for us?
Well, I haven't got your cash, firstly, and I told Anne the good news. Did you not even follow the horse then for the derby that won?
No, I didn't even
I
watch.
meant to message you and I forgot.
Yeah.
But our horse won.
Yeah, the horse won.
I can't
That's a
believe
crown.
it. How much have we made?
£8.75 in cold, hard cash, Anne.
Wow.
That's what I have for you.
Is that an
Oh, so you don't
£8.75
have-
profit?
I know, sorry,
Yeah,
that's what I
profit.
don't
That's
have.
profit.
I
Because
don't
we didn't place the bet. He used his own
Oh,
money.
that's true. Oh, well, you're very good to honour that bet then. Thank
Well,
you very much. But it's very exciting. Did you put money on the same horse?
No, I didn't. I went with another
Silly
horse.
boy, you should have gone with us. We
Oh,
just
I
went for a
know
good
that.
name.
Don't rub it in
We
already.
just
It's
went
been
for
a
good
week. I
name.
know I did wrong. I know I did wrong.
Brilliant, thank you.
When it comes to money, you see where I'm going to go? We're going to go straight to the golf.
Oh, yes.
The crazy money. I know we've been speaking about it all week, and we all know that the Live Golf Series, which is kicked off at St Albans, or teed off, I should say, huge amounts of money, £160 million, which is being dished out to people like Phil Mickelson just to play. It's kind of like... It's kind of like going on to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and being given the £1 million and then said, how about you play for fun for 20 quid afterwards? And that's pretty much what it's like.
Yeah.
Because surely the excitement, they're trying to have excitement around it. And if there's huge money, surely the only excitement that actually could drum up is the fact that a golfer could win this crazy amount of money, but they're given it already. So that kind of disappears, and so any jeopardy there goes.
No, that's my sort of game.
Yeah, well, get paid, and then if it doesn't work out, but there you go.
But these things happen in the world of sport every so often, don't they? A big championship comes up that's going to pay huge money and threatens to sort of overwhelm the rest. Then usually, ends up as a damp squib because people don't join in.
The problem is that a lot of those things that you mention, they do because... It seems like a nice idea, and it's like this as well. I know we'll make them teams, and then we can have people follow teams. It just doesn't work. If you have, especially with individual sports, teams very rarely work unless it's countries. Like, for example, we've got the Ryder Cup, which would be Europe against America, because you have more to invest in it. And if they try and get people to get involved, be a supporter of this team. And it's worked with 100, which has been enjoyable with cricket. But it's very difficult to get people invested in teams when you have football
teams. Works with the
teams.
Davis Cup in tennis, doesn't it?
Exactly, but again, it's countries. So therefore, you would more likely to invest in it because you've got something to support. Whereas you go, well, which one shall I support, this one or this one? it's not really the same. And they're even selling T-shirts with the team names on. So they're trying very hard, trying to get people involved. They haven't sold many tickets. They've given away a lot of tickets. But then again, does it really matter? As far as they're concerned, because it's just all about getting these players over. But now the PGA, who run golf essentially around the world, they chose their time perfectly to ban players, and every player knew that there was a chance this was going to happen. So this happened yesterday. So they've now said, right, you're not allowed to play, but what's not being mentioned so much is that they can still play in the majors, which is the Masters, the PGA, the US Open and the Open, because the PGA don't run that. So still, those players would be able to play in that. But there's another caveat here, is that they need ranking points to be able to get into those huge events. So therefore...
Yes, if they can't play for the other tournaments that would give them ranking points, they won't rank.
So what do you want, £100 million, or you want the ranking points?
$1 million, please.
How much did this outfit allegedly offer Tiger Woods?
£400 million. And that is to front it. Yeah.
That's just because they presumably, yes, they would have involved him in the whole marketing of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he would have been the face of it. But
I mean,
how you choose?
You just take it and run.
No, he said no.
He has said no. He's
bonkers.
Because he doesn't want to front it. He would be such a major signing for them.
Exactly. But he's someone that loves the game of golf, the history of golf. And also, probably more importantly, does he actually really need
that? No.
I mean, 400 million's a lot of money, but if you've got maybe a couple of $100 million, what else is that going to buy you? An extra bigger car? I don't think so. But some people, they're using the phrase, it's for my family's future. And it's almost like every golfer that's involved is using the family thing. So they've all been very well versed on what to say. But it's all about the money. And it's a very difficult decision to... Well, maybe it's not a difficult decision to make. If someone's waving that sort of money in front of you, you're going to take it.
Well, I would.
Listen.
I would. I mean, I just would. I mean, I just think anyone who says, oh, no, how dreadful, I think it's probably... living on another planet.
I don't know. There's loyalty involved, isn't there? Because Tiger Woods has done very well out of everything organised by the PGA.
It is true.
Throughout his lifetime.
But like we say, when you've got a huge amount of money, is a little bit extra going to make the difference? No. I'm not so sure. But anyway, there are golfers that are earning a lot of money.
What's going on with Mo Salah?
Mo Salah is the PFA Player of the Year. So there's two big football Players of the Year, awards. There's the Football Writers Player of the Year, which usually comes out at the end of the season. The PFA Player of the Year, which is voted by members of the PFA, so in other words, other players. So I don't know whether it's best to be voted. What would you rather be voted by the writers who critique what you do, or be voted by your peers? So when the News Anchor of the Year awards come out, is it the peers one that you would like to...
I'm up for that.
Yeah? As long as the money's right, you'll be quite happy to take it.
I'm on the shortlist.
Yeah?
On the Trick Awards, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for telling me.
Yes.
At least I can vote for you then.
Are you a member of the Trick thing?
Oh, do you have to be a member to vote?
Yeah, so it's a public vote, has gone through, but then now it's I don't know who decides now.
Oh, right.
It's 4 of us on it.
So much for Mo Salah, eh? So much for Mo Salah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Oh,
that's brilliant.
Writers, probably.
OK, but anyway...
Would you really?
The PFA one.
Yeah. Trust the writers?
You're going to go the writers?
Journalists don't trust them as far as I can throw.
Just take all the awards you can get, as long as the money's right. But Mo Salah is the winner, voted by the players. So what they do is the PFA, they go round to all the clubs and literally go round with a ballot and they say, right, well, vote who your favourite player is of the season. Mo Salah won it. So well done to him. One of the only 6, I think, that have actually won it twice.
Do they get money for that?
I don't think they get money for that. But they don't need
kudos, darling, kudos.
It's all about kudos and the money. So they got the money, so a little kudos to go with it, and another award to put on the mantelpiece. Yeah. So well done to Mo Salah.
Nice to have an award on the mantelpiece.
Yeah, put them in the loo, because it just, that's where they belong in.
That's where, that's where people expect them to be, though. It's almost like, have you seen the downstairs toilet? And then there's all.
That's right. Downstairs toilets are a pièce de résistance. You go to posh people's houses, well-known people's houses,
cartoons,
and they've really absolutely got them dead right. Yes.
Cartoons with them on.
You have to make a big feature of the downstairs loo.
The other thing anyone ever says when they come out of my downstairs toilet is, "Why haven't you got a mirror in there?"
Oh, well, put a mirror in then.
Oh no, I shouldn't.
And what's with the crocheted lady there over the top of the toilet roll? For goodness' sake, what's going on there?
Spanish lady.
There you go.
Paul, we're out of time.
I've only just got going. All we did was speak about your awards and your money. That was it.
Frankly, Paul, we're cutting you down quickly because you haven't brought the money in.
OK, fair enough.
So come back with the dosh.
I'll bring the money. Give me an extra 5 minutes. We'll see how we go.
OK,
This is how it works, Paul.
Have a lovely weekend.
Meanwhile, we'll move on. Time is 7:37. A very good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News. What? I know you two. You knew you could detect that little hesitancy in my voice.
There goes the award. There goes the award. It's over.
It's Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
The government's spending about £3.5 million to produce ID cards for voters to reduce the opportunity for voter fraud in the UK.
Yeah, is this a smart solution to an ongoing problem, or is it actually wasted money which would be better spent on the cost of living crisis? Well, with us now is the Shadow Minister for Levelling Up, Alex Norris. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So, what do you think? A waste of money, tinkering with a problem, or could it actually do some good?
Yeah, we're surprised that given just how challenging things are for people at the moment, and that all the priority really ought to be on helping people tackle the cost of living, that an eye-watering sum of money is being spent on something that, frankly, isn't really a problem. There's been very, very few cases of voter personation, and this will mean, millions of pounds being spent to tackle it. And as I say, I think that's the wrong priority.
Later on about priorities on that one. What about what the Prime Minister unveiled yesterday when it comes to priorities to deal with, in effect, levelling up, getting more people on the housing ladder?
Well, I think viewers could be forgiven for having felt that it was Groundhog Day. These are, very small, gimmicky policies that have been announced in some form already. We've got significant challenges with housing, and that plays a core part in levelling up our communities. But what we saw yesterday, I think, lacked the ambition to really grab a hold of that, and instead was rather chasing headlines to move on from what's been a very difficult week for the Prime Minister. And I suspect in 6 months' time we'll be having a similar interview when they press release this again.
Given, I suppose, we all have to accept there's only a limited amount of money available for spending on something, you're a Shadow Minister for Levelling Up. Where would you spend it? What would you prioritise right now?
Well, what we need to see at the moment is the money that communities have lost to invest in, whether that's the physical infrastructure, whether that's the skills of their population that's been lost over the last decade. I'd be putting the money into that. That would have the most direct return for those communities. That would help close skills gaps. That would help improve skilled working communities. That would mean that people could build their lives and, yes, access housing. That's where the money would be most impactful, rather than kind of throwing it at problems that don't exist, that, again, are more of a political thing than they are a substantive thing to improve people's lives.
You can't say the housing crisis doesn't exist, though, can you?
No, far from it. So what we needed to see and what we've suggested are some very meaningful things that would tackle that. One of the biggest problems, again, it's a huge levelling up issue. A community like mine that used to have a lot of industrial sites, many of which have sat there derelict for 20 years. People own them. They're designated for housing. You could build hundreds of houses on them without touching the green belt, and they sit there because it's more valuable to developers to do that. I'd rather see councils given the proper powers to tackle that. That would get housing going. Similarly, what we'd like to see, and it seems like the government might be taking this one from us, another one of those that we announced in September, that giving first dibs on new development to first-time buyers, so that overseas speculators don't just buy them off plan. Those are meaningful things that would make a real difference, as opposed to what we're seeing at the moment, which is, I think, the government chasing headlines rather than really grasping hold of the problem.
Very quickly, before we sadly lose you because of time, what do you think the government should do next? What should anyone do next about those 2 British-born Ukrainian soldiers who have been now charged and look as though they're under threat of death?
Yes, this is an awful situation. Aidan Aslan comes from just down the road from me. Sean Pinner and the gentleman from Morocco, I think, are all in all of our thoughts. We need complete clarity and unity on this. These are prisoners of war who have rights as combatants. They should not be being tried by, these spurious courts and sentenced in the way that they have. So we've all now got to pull together, as a country and as a international community, to make sure these young men get their rights, because it's, exceptionally concerning.
Look, you've said the right thing there, but what does it there isn't actually an answer, is there? I mean, you say we've got to all pull together to make sure this happens. We can't actually do anything, can we?
Well, this isn't something that, we can just click our fingers and resolve, because let's face it, if we could, we would. But the government, through the Foreign Office, will be engaging as they would through diplomatic channels. It's important that those who they engage with are seeing that we are unified in our purpose on this, and that we expect that, that their rights would be protected as they ought to be, and as they would be if the boot was on the other foot. So, yes, that's not an easy answer, but it is the right thing to do, and that's what we must all do today.
Well, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. And to anyone watching at the moment, do stay with us. We've got plenty more to come, including we'll be taking you through today's newspapers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
"7:45 morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio and online.
Yes, we're going through the newspapers now, and joining us this morning is the author and academic Joanna Williams and broadcaster David Hamilton. Lovely to see you both back. Shall we start off with this, Joanna, with the idea that there's going to be a smoking ban. One day, none of us will smoke.
Oh, well, this is a report which has been rumbling away in the news, in the background of the news all week. It's Javed Khan, former director of Bernardo's charity. He produced an independent review for the government. We don't know which of it will, if any, will actually pass into law yet. But the various proposals to try and get smoking banned completely. So the one that's got a lot of attention so far has been about raising the age at which people can buy cigarettes, either just in one-off hit, making it 21 rather than an 18, which it is currently, or kind of raising it 1 year every year so that the current 15-year-olds would never, ever be able to buy cigarettes at all throughout their lives. But the one that's getting attention in the Telegraph this morning is this plan to actually ban smoking in beer gardens. And the government apparently is taking this one very seriously. I've got to say, I mean, I'm a non-smoker who, likes a very, very occasional cigarette.
Oh, dear.
No, that's not a non-smoker.
Well, I mean, I'm talking like 6 a year. This is the kind of thing. 1 every 2 months is my ration. But this to me, this is kind of sad. The idea that you can't do that, that it might not be possible. I mean, I get perhaps banning smoking inside pubs, if you're in that enclosed environment. And I remember going out when I was kind of teenager and you come back and your clothes just reek of cigarettes. But a beer garden, seriously, you're sitting outside, you can walk away from people who are smoking if you don't like it. It just seems a very adult, sociable thing that obviously nobody's forced to smoke, but if you wanted to.
I think what upsets, we were talking about this the other day and I was saying I think smoke-free is a good idea. And a lot of people got in touch and said it's all about choice, and I totally take that on board. I think the problem here, isn't it, is if we're phasing it out, that's one thing. To ban it is a different sort of connotation.
I'm actually a reformed smoker.
Thought you might be.
Yes, I smoked for many years until I saw my oldest friend dying of cancer. And I went to the London hospital on the Mile End Road, and there was a ward of people, young men dying of cancer. And I took my cigarette packet and I threw it in the gutter. I was a little out, actually. I remember the evening, it was pouring with rain, and I never smoked again. How I stopped was actually sucking polo mints. And it's a great way if you want to get off smoking, because it takes away the nicotine craving. So I recommend it to anybody. And I think when I did that, that was the best thing I ever did, because both my parents died very young of lung cancer. And I think, as you might have said earlier, that smoking is the one thing that doesn't do anybody any good at all. I think you said you might have a glass of wine, you might relax a bit, but I don't think smoking is creative in any way. People say it gives you something to do with your hands, but I think giving up...
Yeah, take up knitting, I say. I
thought you said take up eating.
Oh, eat. Well, that people do, don't they, when they give up smoking? They tend to put on weight. But I was just thinking about that the other day with the Jubilee. The reason the Queen has been on the throne so long is because her father died of lung cancer.
Yes.
Because he came from a day when everybody smoked 60, 70 a day, and apparently he did. And you look at the age difference. She's 96 and still going strong. She's never smoked in her life. I don't know, that sort of brought it home.
If you look at the old films, everybody's smoking, aren't they?
All the time.
Yeah, it was just, that's what everybody did. Thank God that's all stopped now. I think anything that discourages people from smoking in any way can only be a good thing.
I do wonder a little bit about the impact this might have on pubs, because we know that lots of pubs have gone out of business in recent years, and people might not stop smoking. People might just decide, well, if I can't have a cigarette in the pub garden, I might just stay at home instead.
We heard all that, though, when it was the smoking ban inside. I don't think it had the impact that many people feared. But I don't know, it's a tricky one. It's banning it outside.
Maybe you don't ban it, but you create an area in the garden for smokers and non-smokers.
Yeah, maybe. Can we talk about another health issue, David? This is in the Times. Dementia. And music can help, apparently.
Yes, there's an article in the Times today that a nostalgia detective app that tunes into the world's largest music catalogue has been launched to help patients with dementia recall important memories. The Vera app has access to every song owned by the Universal Music Group. That includes hits by Adele, U2, Otis Redding, Elton John, and an algorithm curates personal playlists using background information for patients and carers, and they pinpoint the perfect song at the right time for the listener. And I must tell you this, I had a very touching story from a listener the other day who had a partner with dementia, and shortly before she died, he played her Patsy Cline's song Crazy, which she loved. And she remembered every word, she sang along, and she was pitch perfect.
Wow.
So
Really?
that's what dementia, that's what music can do to help
cut
dementia.
through, yeah?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, well, that's definitely worth looking at then, isn't it?
It's like a sort of music therapy, isn't it?
Yeah. We've just got time for a very quick look at Google being hugely biased to the left, apparently, according to the Mail.
Yeah, well, this is some research that's been undertaken, and they've basically put Boris Johnson and various other words into Google and had a look to see which sources of stories are most likely to come up on the top of the Google rankings. It shows basically that The Guardian and The Independent are the two newspapers which will absolutely dominate the first 2 or 3 pages of Google. And this is not based on any objective measure of the kind of facts or the information within those stories. And it's not based on even which pages features get the most hits. It's just what the Google algorithms have decided are the most authoritative or the most kind of good stories that we should all be reading.
So it's not a bias to the left, it's just a bias for the sort of subjects that those newspapers cover?
Well, it could be seen that way, but what they're suggesting is that at a time when every newspaper was talking about Boris Johnson, so the same stories are featuring in all the newspapers, Google is somehow choosing to put The Guardian and The Independent up first. And it's just suggesting that there's perhaps some bias there. When I go to Google, you do tend to assume that what you're getting is fairly neutral or fairly objective or even just random. But what's being highlighted in the story is that it might not be as random or as objective as we think.
Interesting. Look, we're out of time, you two. Joanna, David, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on, though.
Right, we'll move on. Now, many households across the UK are wasting water, despite warnings that we could face serious water shortages by 2050.
Now, the Journey of Water campaign is something new. It's educating children and families about our fresh water and how to reduce our use of it.
It's hoped that not only could this help save the UK's natural resources, but also help reduce household bills. And we could all do with that now.
We could. Let's talk to presenter and author Simon Reeve, who's involved in all this. Good to see you, Simon. So how does this work? What is it teaching us to do?
Well, it's trying to teach us to save more water at home. And I think really just trying to raise awareness on the importance of saving water. As you say, it's a new campaign. It's being run by Finnish and WWF. The Journey of Water is all about where our water really comes from, because so often we forget that very often it comes from the UK's freshwater sources, so our streams, our rivers, our beautiful wetlands, and they're already at great risk from the effects of climate change, from our increasing population, and just from how much water we now use compared to 3 decades ago. You know, we're using a lot more water. There's a growing demand. Some areas there is already quite a significant water stress. And yeah, the Environment Agency has warned that if the current trends continue, we could face quite serious water shortages by 2050 unless action is taken. So we're really trying to promote the idea, save water at home. We've got loads of tips for saving water on the website at finnish.co.uk/journey of water. There's loads we can do. Just simple things like turning the tap off when you're brushing your teeth this morning, for goodness sake. Absolutely vital to do that. That can save loads of litres. They're not pre-rinsing the dishes before you put them in the dishwasher. That can save hundreds of litres every year. And if you have a dishwasher, if you're using a dishwasher, that can save up to about 7,000 litres per year compared to washing by hand. So there's loads we can all do to try and protect our water and protect our wetlands and our rivers.
Can I just say I'm slightly suspicious of that. If this is sponsored by, if this is sponsored by Finnish, who make dishwasher tablets, and we know dishwashers use a lot. I mean, surely using a sink full of water is a lot less than putting on the dishwasher.
No, because the dishwashers now, they use a sort of cupful of water per wash. They're very efficient. I mean, I'm exaggerating when I say a cupful, but they're very efficient at how they work. So I think it's solid advice and solid information. There's loads of other ones as well. If you take a short shower instead of having a bath, that can save about 20 litres, but it's a cumulative effect of how we use water at home. If we can reduce that down, that means we're going to be more able to protect, as I say, our freshwater sources. People think water in the UK is just infinite, but it's actually facing a lot of challenges, and we've had our population increase dramatically, 15 million increased by 15 million since the 1960s. So we've got to be more careful about how we use our water. And as you were saying initially, there's research that's been done now that's showing that a lot of people aren't aware really of where even water is coming from. It turns out about a quarter of children who were questioned for a new survey think that fresh water comes from the supermarket. So we need to explain to families where the water's coming from and why it matters.
Absolutely. Simon, I'm afraid we've got to finish it there because we've run out of time too. But thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. It's interesting. I always think that it's such a shame that we in this country use drinking water to do things like clean our cars. There should be 2 sources of water, shouldn't there? Fresh for drinking, that, you know, the money goes into actually making is safe.
And then dirty water.
Yeah, dirty water or whatever, brown water or whatever you call it.
Yeah, interesting. Loads of you getting in touch on the planning, the housing applications things and the housing crisis. Keighley, I'm drawn to this one because Keighley is in Furness in Cumbria, the Furness Peninsula, which is where I'm from.
Yeah, right.
It's a very small area, so I probably bumped into Keighley in Tesco's at some point. Morning, Keighley. She says there's a large amount of planning applications for executive homes in Furness. The wages for the area don't match the house prices. And she's absolutely right.
That is so true. That sort of puts it into a nutshell, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do get in touch with us anyway on any of the items we've been talking about today with your views. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Friday the 10th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We are live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, on your radio and online, and this is what we've got for you today.
The Prime Minister Boris Johnson has unveiled plans to allow benefits to be put towards mortgages in England. But how did the speech go down with you?
Two Ukrainian soldiers who are in fact British have been captured by pro-Russian forces in Ukraine, have been found guilty and sentenced to death. As the families now ask for government legal support, should the UK be ready to become more involved in the conflict?
And how, after being isolated in our homes during the COVID pandemic, is this new year bringing back a sense of community and helping us all be better neighbours?
We'd love to hear from you. Loads of your views coming through this morning. As always, we absolutely love it. We're going to run through all of your views in just a moment. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
And you can, of course, subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest big stories that everyone's talking about.
Let's just kick off with Mark. Morning, Mark, who says, I thought you might like this photo of my grandson, Abel, trying his clothes on for a wedding this weekend. It reminds us of a baby Boris. Love the show. And if you're on the radio this morning...
He really is a baby Boris.
Just imagine Boris Johnson at the age of about 1.5 in a suit.
I wonder if he'll grow up to be a Prime Minister.
You never know. And Rhiannon, our newsreader, says her child is a better Boris lookalike. But we haven't
put
got a picture to show.
Oh, well,
There you
we'll
go.
try and
Never
find
mind.
that a bit later on. Debs has got in touch. Morning, Debs, who said that that Norfolk coastline, we had a lovely report, which we will play again a bit later, about the two brothers who've unearthed, or, well, they haven't quite unearthed it yet, but they've discovered a sunken warship from the 17th century just off the Norfolk coastline.
Incredible.
And I was saying how lovely it looked with the bright blue sky and the sand and the sea. It just looked fantastic. She said that Norfolk coastline was Great Yarmouth Beach. Strangely, I was just reading about the shipwreck in my local paper as your news piece came on, and that felt like quite an astounding coincidence.
Yes. Do you know what? I quite fancy doing a show on the beach.
Yes, yeah, beaches are lovely.
That would be lovely. We could do that.
The weather's a little bit more
When
reliable.
the weather's nice, yeah.
Just tell me when the weather's reliable in this.
Tell you what, smoking. We're talking earlier on the paper review about banning smoking in beer gardens, which, seems a bit sort of extreme in a way. Well, you're all for it so far. Kevin says you cannot walk away if you're eating in the beer garden and someone comes next to you and starts smoking. Ban it.
Yeah, and Ian in Cumbria says the same thing. Beer garden smoking ban can't come soon enough, in my view, because the smokers always grab the best areas. Yeah. I think maybe, rather than a ban, it always feels wrong to just say ban, ban, ban this, ban that. Maybe just create a separate area for smokers, even in the beer garden. Because the best way, surely, to do anything is to phase it out. I mean, we should have started years and years ago, decades ago, but to phase things out and make them just less socially acceptable.
I do think it's very odd that the only sort of phasing thing we've ever done is put the price up, which goes up every year. I mean, what is it now, about 10 quid for a packet of fags or something else, or around that mark now? But people still
pay for it, yeah.
Which, it's a ridiculous amount of money.
But anyway. You can change people's attitudes. Hopefully, I don't know, by campaigns and things, by making something unfashionable or just undesirable and not seen as very neighbourly and nice.
Yeah. Oh, well, it might be worth a try. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister attempted to reset his premiership with a speech in Blackpool in which he promised to tackle the tax burden and extend right to buy, amongst other policies.
Well, let's talk to the Minister for School Standards, Robin Walker, who joins us now. It's lovely to see you this morning. Look, when it comes to what the Prime Minister was outlining yesterday, we've talked to a lot of politicos today, and all they seem to say is, well, where's the substance?
I think there is real substance in extending right to buy. That's something that I think is a policy that delivers huge social mobility and opportunity for chances for people to get on the housing ladder back in the 1980s. But because of changes over time and the move from councils controlling property to more registered social landlords, it has slowed right down. I think it's absolutely right that the government should be looking at all the tools in its disposal to revive that policy, to make sure that we do it on a way that replaces one-for-one any housing stock that comes out of the affordable rented sector. But I also think tax cuts, and we're having a very substantial one this month with the raise in the national insurance threshold, are something that will help to keep more money in people's pockets at a time when we all know we're facing huge challenges with the cost of living. So I think both of those things are the right things to be focused on, but also we need to look at our delivery across public services. I know that my health colleagues are working as hard as they can to catch up with the backlog from COVID on that front. And I know in education, we're investing in levelling up, in providing school places where they are most needed, in making sure we have the best teachers in front of classes up and down the country. And I'm excited today to be able to launch a programme of 60 new specialist schools, 15 new mainstream schools to address the need for places where they are most needed and where they'll make the most difference.
But we've been talking about the need to build more houses, frankly, since I started in television. And that's a very long time. And just to say, we'll replace one for one, it's not nearly enough, is it? And just to say, we will look at these problems now. I mean, you've been in business for a long time already. You've left it too late, haven't you?
We saw, just before the pandemic hit, we saw the highest level of house building in 20 years. And I know in my constituency, where we saw, I think it was just 4 houses, new affordable houses a year being delivered under a Labour government and a Labour council before 2010. We were able to raise that to hundreds of new affordable houses by the end of that decade. Clearly, the pandemic has had an impact, though, on the delivery of new housing, and we need to make sure that we're getting back to building and we're delivering more. So I think some of the planning reforms that have been suggested will be helpful in that respect. Crucially, focusing on brownfield first, making more public land available for delivering housing. I've got a fantastic example of that in my own constituency with the regeneration of Shrub Hill, something that people have been talking about for decades, but this government is delivering through funding through a towns fund. So we can do these things. We can deliver more housing, including in city centres, and we need to get on and do it. But I do think this is part of a wider challenge as well, where we need to be levelling up across the country. And that's why I think the targeting of the support for schools that I'm announcing today is really important. We've got these 55 education investment areas. We want to prioritise those for new schools so that actually areas where perhaps children haven't had the opportunity to progress post-16 previously can have that gap filled. Have that opportunity to go as far as they can in their education and perhaps to go on to university, perhaps to take our new T-levels so that they can have the best chances in the workplace. And that's something I think we should be unapologetic about pressing forward with and not listening, I think, to some of the carping that we've heard from some of the unions on this, suggesting that these are wrong priorities.
Well, look, yeah, I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with investing in our youngsters' education, quite right. But they've got to have the jobs to come out with it. In terms of levelling up, that's great with the education side of it, yes. But they've got to then, if they're going to come out with better qualifications, they've got to have the jobs to go to, haven't they? This is bigger than just covering one area.
Absolutely, and we have to have a strong economy which is delivering jobs. We got the lowest levels of unemployment since the 1970s. That's great, but we also want to see people earning more. And the reality is we live in a world now where people are likely to have more jobs during their career, which is why we need to invest in lifelong education and skills. And I know my colleagues at the department are working on this lifelong learning entitlement to make sure we can support people in reskilling through their careers. All of these things are absolutely vital priorities. But for me as schools minister, what I want to make sure is that children are getting the best start in life, that we're investing in catch-up post-pandemic so that we can drive up the standards of literacy, of numeracy, the access to a broad and rich curriculum, which will give them the best chance to go out there and make a difference in the world. And I think today's announcement, although it's a small one, we're in the grand scheme of things talking about 75 schools up and down the country, 14,000 new places for children, can play an important part in that, alongside all the investment that we're providing and all the support we're providing to invest in quality of teaching. And that's the other element of our announcement today, is we're moving from a system in which we only recognise teachers on a menu of countries as a result of our EU membership from elsewhere. What we're saying is we should recognise teachers according to the quality of the training they've received. It doesn't matter where they're coming from in the world. If they want to come and work in this country and teach in this country, what should matter is have they been trained to an equivalent standard to our teachers in the UK. And I think in the long run that can also help in meeting our challenge of providing the best possible teachers in front of every class in the UK.
Well, before we love you and leave you, which we must do just now, actually, I just wanted to say that I used to live in your constituency. I was brought up there. And, of course, your father was my MP then. What's it like to inherit that mantle? Was there anyone else in between you and him?
Oh yes, there was quite a big gap. He was succeeded by Peter Luff, and then the boundaries changed. Peter moved to the rural part of the constituency, and Mike Foster won the seat for the Labour Party in 1997. So I was a great honour and an amazing opportunity to be able to win it back again in 2010. But it's been great fun, and it's been fascinating meeting so many people over the years who knew my father, including a number of people who would say, "Oh, I always voted Labour except for your father because he was a decent bloke and he listened." That's a hard act to follow, but it's one that I thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity of taking on.
And is there anyone in the next generation who's going to try and follow your act?
I wouldn't claim any certainty on that front, but my daughter Hermione is certainly outspoken enough that at 4 years old, she can have a bright future in politics.
Oh, that's great. Lovely to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. OK, well, let's see what the Daily Express's political correspondent Dan Falvey makes of all of that. Morning.
Good morning.
What did you think?
Well, again, the government are going on about levelling up, cost of living. These are the two priorities that the government have set themselves. Again, it's something they've been going on for a long time now. Levelling up was one of the big pushes in the 2019 election. Get Brexit done, level up the UK to thank those voters who put their trust in Boris Johnson for the first time. Schooling, as you said, is something that everyone can get behind, helping people with education. But that's not the only thing people want. They want to see more done on housing. They've spoken about housing. I don't think that people think goes anywhere near enough. They want to see more done in terms of bringing down their cost of living. They want to see far more from the government.
OK. Look, we've got to leave it there, but thank you. I know you've been hanging about for a bit, so thank you very much indeed, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, lots to talk about today. And what do you think of Boris Johnson's announcements? We'd love to know. Do they convince you? Now, on to another serious story of the day. 2 Britons and a Moroccan captured by Russian forces in Ukraine have been found guilty and sentenced to death in an unrecognised court in Donetsk, the Ukrainian territory held by pro-Russian rebels. The family of one of the soldiers, Aidan Aslin, has called for the UK government to intervene before Aidan is killed.
Well, for more reaction to this, let's talk to Brennan Phillips, who's been in Ukraine as a frontline advisor and healthcare provider. Good to talk to you this morning. Am I right in thinking that during your work you've come across these 2 gents?
Yep, I actually trained Aidan in Syria in years gone by in tactical combat casualty care and also in treating casualties there.
Be difficult for you to talk about, but in one respect, is it a surprise that these 2 have been sort of taken to trial, as sham as it is, rather than just being shot on the spot?
I'm actually not surprised. I think from the start they wanted to be as provocative as they could be, and obviously they have been, and this plays into the information space for Russia and providing a warning to any Westerners like myself who are willing to come to Ukraine and help. It also garners attention to their cause and if anything, gives them leverage diplomatically and provides some semblance of legitimacy to their efforts in their war in Ukraine.
What do you think the British government should do next?
Ensure a decisive Ukrainian victory. I've been asked, what can the UK government do to ensure their release, and it's the same thing that it would take to win the war. The sooner that Russia is defeated in Ukraine, the sooner that they will be released.
Yeah, I mean, look, as you highlight, this is very... I mean, it's difficult for all Ukrainians, of course, but very difficult for Westerners like you. Why do you want to still keep up the fight? Why do you want to still be there?
It's a worthwhile cause. The people here are no different than you and I. They want freedom. They should have a right to it, a right to self-determination, a right not to live under Russian fascism, and a right to be free. They have been subject to Russian aggression for decades now. And I know that the sentence that has been passed on Aidan and Sean is a shock to us in the West. And it's angering. It's angering to the Ukrainian people as well. But it's not a shock to them because they are used to living under Russian rule. And so they also have come to expect it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thank you.
It's shocking to sort of get that perspective. I mean, these are... Whatever you think of, I mean, I find it very difficult to imagine people going over to fight someone else's fight, but these are people who are not built like you or I, or most of us.
And they're professional.
Anyway, they are professional.
And they know the risks, but their families are suffering terribly, terribly.
Absolutely. Look, let's bring you up to date with the stories at 8:16. MPs have criticised the government's plans to burn £4 billion of unusable personal protective equipment that doesn't meet NHS standards. The Public Accounts Committee has accused the Department of Health and Social Care of wasting 75% of the £12 billion it spent on PPE in the first year of the pandemic due to faulty kits and inflated prices.
The Foreign Secretary says death sentences handed to those 2 British men captured whilst fighting in Ukraine are a sham judgment with no legitimacy. Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner have been accused, as you just heard, of mercenary activities by pro-Russian rebels in a court in the separatist region of Donetsk. A Moroccan national was also sentenced to death.
The first hearing into the Capitol Hill riot on January the 6th, a couple of years ago now, in which Donald Trump supporters attempted to overturn his election defeat, has been held. It brought forward new CCTV and police body cam footage, which though shows thousands of protesters attacking officers and smashing the windows of the Capitol. It's the first of 6 planned hearings intended to show the former president tried to unlawfully hold on to power.
And child cruelty and neglect have gone up by 25% in England over the last year. Police data gathered by the NSPCC shows what they're calling the worrying scale of abuse and neglect. They're urging the government to increase resources and support for child protection.
It's interesting with those hearings on the riots, the Capitol Hill riots, because the former Attorney General, Trump's Attorney General, has come forward and said, the idea that the election was stolen is nonsense.
And even Ivanka Trump
Trump said the same thing.
Which is astonishing.
So it's very odd.
What's going on?
Anyway, we'll have to keep a close eye on those hearings. Stay with us, lots more still to come. And keep, of course, sending through all your messages. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We're going to run through more of them in just a moment.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A bright start for many of us, but a breezy start, and that wind will pick up further during the rest of the day with showers developing. Those showers will be frequent and heavy for Scotland and Northern Ireland near this low pressure. This is an unusually deep area of low pressure for the time of year. We don't often see this sort of thing in early June, so unseasonably strong winds expected during the rest of the day and into tomorrow. Also, a few showers around first thing. East Anglia, southern England sees 1 or 2, but the most frequent showers will develop across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Heavy at times with hail and thunder in places, and that strengthening wind. A breezy day for many of us, but the wind strongest across exposed coasts of western Scotland, reaching gale force here, 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Feeling cool where that wind is at its strongest, but further south and east, a reasonably warm day, still the potential for low 20s, even 24 Celsius in London, and staying mostly dry with sunny spells here, clearing skies in the south and the east overnight. Further showers perhaps for parts of Wales and western England, but again, the most frequent showers or more prolonged rain for parts of Scotland, especially towards the northwest. And again, a blustery night to come. But of course, that will keep the temperatures up, so a relatively mild start to the weekend. And again, another bright start for central and eastern parts of the country. Quite quickly, the cloud will build and we'll see further showers developing. I think more showers to come across Wales, central and northern England compared to Friday. And a stronger breeze, that breeze bouncing over the hills of Wales and northern England. But the strongest winds, the most frequent showers, will again affect Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it will feel a bit cooler as a result. Sunday looks a little less windy, a little less showery, but still some blustery showers around, sunshine in between them. Monday, on the whole, looks like an improvement with, for many, a drier and calmer day.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.22. Morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yes. Got lots to talk about, but also we want to hear your views. And you'll have views on our next guest in a moment, but hold off. We were talking about smoking and whether banning it, particularly in beer gardens, would work. And I was making the point that the Queen's father died. The reason she's been on the throne for 70 years is because she came to the throne so early, because her father died of lung cancer, because he smoked something like 60 or 70 a day. Alison says, and the Queen Mother smoked, though, and she had a long life. I don't think she smoked anything like that amount, though. No. Dave says, why should non-smokers have to move away from smokers in a beer garden? Non-smokers are entitled to use a beer garden too, but I've stopped using beer gardens because of the smokers. So even in summer, when we have one, I now sit in the pub, enjoying my meal and drink indoors, smoke-free.
Yeah, John says, smoking used to help me concentrate and relax. Since I gave up, I haven't been able to concentrate as well. I can only relax by drinking a lot of alcohol. Well,
there you are. That's another thing, isn't it? Another day, another...
Oh, yes. I wonder if that's John who messaged us the other day about you drinking and wanted beer banks set up.
Hey, I tell you what we're going to talk about now is another form of addiction, or at least I think it's a form of addiction. And that's tattooing, being tattooed. Because apparently tattooed crew members at the British airline Virgin Atlantic are going to now be welcome to show off their ink while in uniform. And the company claim they are the first UK airline to allow visible tattoos.
It's crazy to try and hide them these days. The company says they've always encouraged their staff to be themselves, and their employees can now show off their tattoos with pride.
Well, joining us now is a man who knows a thing or two about tattoos. He's an Oxford University maths professor, Tom Crawford, and he's covered in them.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. I was about to say guilty when you say covered in them.
Well, you are rather, aren't you? Thank you very much for showing them off, actually, this morning.
I mean,
you've got some pretty interesting tattoos. You've got a mathematics arm.
Yes. So it kind of happened by accident that I ended up getting all the maths ones down this arm. So numbers, equations, sort of geometry, fun shapes. Various things going on there.
Yeah, and then just a bit of fun and colour on that.
Yeah, this one's just a bit more of a random assortment. There's still some maths ones in there. There's an equation or two dotted around.
Why? I mean, to me, it just seems remarkable that even Virgin are having to say, look, we're allowing people to show off their tattoos. Why not? If you've got them, it's not a sign of... People think it's a bit thuggish or something.
I think that's the the sort of old-fashioned view of the situation. And it's interesting you say that, because when I was mentioning to my colleagues at university yesterday, over lunch, we were chatting about, what are you doing tomorrow? And I mentioned I was going to talk about this. They were amazed that it was even a discussion that needed to be had about, there is an issue of should you or should you not be able to have visible tattoos in kind of any profession, never mind whether it's on the airline or me teaching.
Yeah.
Yes, but you're a professor at Oxford, goodness gracious. I would imagine that most people... Aren't people quite surprised? I don't imagine the students are, but students' parents probably are.
I think surprise is a good way to describe it, in the sense of a lot of the time, say, when you go to dinner, you wear like a shirt or a jacket, so my tattoos wouldn't be visible. And then, somebody who I was sat next to at dinner might see me the next day in a T-shirt, because I'm going to teach, and they'll sort of, I wouldn't say like shocked, but they're kind of like, oh, you have tattoos. And then it's kind of like, almost like something we can then use to discuss around, especially with lots of mine being mathematical. I kind of use it as a tool to then explain what they are and sort of talk about maths.
I wondered about that. Sorry, I was just going to say, I wonder if you stand up in front of a group and you're talking about, and somebody says, oh, E, the definition or the mathematical definition of E, and you just roll up your shirt and say, there it is, because that's what you've got on that arm.
Yes. So E is...
So do you use it as demonstration? Instead of a blackboard, now you use your own body?
I have done from time to time. I do actually do... so in general, as part of my role at the university, I do lots of school talks, lots of like outreach work. And it is a really good opportunity to go in and the students immediately want to know what are these bands on your arm? What is this number? What is E? And it's sort of, I think it really helps to like get their curiosity, and then I can just use that, and they immediately then want to hear about maths.
Is there more controversy over the ink or over the piercings?
Very good point. So very rarely there will be somebody who potentially you get a vibe isn't too keen on my appearance, shall we say. Yeah. And I think it is a case of being the appearance rather than necessarily the tattoos. So even if I didn't have tattoos, I would still, I wouldn't teach in a vest, but that was special for today. I would wear a T-shirt and I would wear jeans. So I think given, I have a lip ring, I have spikes in my ears, messy hair, whatever, I think those people who were maybe offended by the tattoos would probably also be offended by my just general style and the way I look. Yeah. So I think it's more of a question of should you be able to dress and appear how you want in your profession rather than necessarily the tattoos.
You see, it's interesting because a lot of people in our business are very surprised when they see me in my casual wear because I've got the big tattoos down my arm and things.
He's addicted.
And they're very surprised. But we got our first tattoos together.
We did,
Miss Diamond is tattooed.
Yeah, we did, absolutely. I've got a little diamond on there, but I chose it there so that I can cover it up when I want. It's easy to cover up most of the time, and you can uncover it in the summer or whatever when you want. But Stephen went on to get more and more tattoos. You see, that's where I think you've become addicted.
No, because
you must be addicted.
Maybe. So I feel like when people mention this to me, there are those people who are addicted to the pain and the pleasure of being tattooed. See, I'm the same. I couldn't think of anything worse. It's awful. I put up with it because I enjoy having tattoos. So potentially you could say you kind of get, at least for me, I kind of get a little bit addicted to being able to create art on my body and modify and different things. So yeah, potentially there's a little bit of an addiction, but I certainly do know that there is a proper thing about addiction to the pain of it and that feeling, and very much not for me.
Do you ever get to the point where you think, you're very careful now with what you where, or do you ever get to the point where you think, I wish I could erase one and put something...
Not yet, thankfully. So again, this is something that common question I get asked is, what if you've got one you don't like and different things?
What if one of those equations is proved to be erroneous one day?
Well, I think I just have to make a joke out of it. you just put a line through it or something. I don't know, I feel like once you're at the point of having as many tattoos as I do, it's almost like each one is less of a big deal in some sense. It's the first one you're oh, this is a permanent thing, I need to think really carefully. But as you have more and more, it becomes more about an expression of your personality.
Yeah.
And so I think if there was an erroneous equation, I think I'd just sort of get a line through it and say, now corrected.
Can I just ask, I thought E equaled MC squared.
That's a different E.
It's a different
we do this all the time in maths.
So what E is that?
This is Euler's number. So it's like pi. It has an infinite decimal expansion. So it goes on and on forever. I've got 120 digits of it on my arm. And pi comes up in geometry when you do circles. The number E comes up when you study calculus.
Right.
So if you do A-level maths or that kind of college-level maths, you will come across calculus and you will see the number E appear.
Have you got the Fibonacci sequence anywhere?
I don't. It's on the list. It's on the. I have an ideas list of all these cool maths things that I just love to get tattooed.
I must say, if you go into schools, at least that says maths is cool.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important thing, to show that you don't have to be a certain type of person to be a mathematician, right? Yeah. And that's kind of this is just me expressing myself, but I do get messages from people saying, thank you for just being visible because I have tattoos and I thought I couldn't be a mathematician at Oxford, and I see you and now I think,
yeah, you are.
Maybe I can.
Quite right, Dr. Tom. Thank you very much indeed. Very good to see you this morning. Give me a few ideas as well.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah, I've actually got my next ones booked in, but not till August. Oh, I hope my mother isn't watching.
Addicted.
She doesn't like it.
What do you think of that? Anyway, love to hear your views. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.33. I've just had a tweet from Eyes Right, who says, "Hi, Stephen and Anne. We're sat in our summer apartment in Turkey, listening to you on our smart speaker as we sip coffee. Listen to you every weekend, and we love your show. View on the centre picture looks very nice. So you don't have to put the telly on, just listen on the radio."
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, it's
Morning
lovely to
team.
hear where you're listening and watching from, because I know we have people all over the world, but all over the UK too. So get in touch with us and tell us where you are and whether you're sipping coffee while you're getting up this morning.
Nice. How nice.
It's time to go through the papers now, and joining us this morning, the author and academic Joanna Williams, and broadcaster, legendary broadcaster, David Hamilton. And a very good morning to you. I've only just noticed that you've got blue eyes, David.
Blue
which
eyes.
is why you wear blue a lot, because it absolutely brings out the blue in your
Sometimes,
eyes.
occasionally they're red, but this morning they're blue.
No, they're blue. They're quite a respectable
Yes,
blue.
your suit makes them pop.
It does.
As the young people say.
Is that right?
Joanna, tell us about the steam trains, the train routes that are slower than steam.
Absolutely. So we've been talking a lot this morning about the rising cost of fuel, and people might look to travel by train then as a suitable alternative. But this story in the I newspaper is highlighting the train routes that are slower, believe it or not, than it would have been to go by a steam train over 100 years ago. So they point to two in particular: Leeds Bradford, 8 miles, takes you 20 minutes by train, was quicker in 1900 when steam trains operated on that route. Preston to Skipton, again in Yorkshire, 35 miles, over 3 hours.
No.
Yeah.
Lancashire, that one.
They're saying east-west or west-east.
Is always bad.
It's always bad. But yeah, 35 miles, 3 hours.
35 miles, 3 hours, that must...
Two changes.
You could run faster.
No, absolutely. Change in Manchester, change in Leeds, and, wait for it, £44 for your ticket, £44. So, I mean, this is what
That's
we've got to weigh
outrageous.
up. You know, when you look at this cost of fuel, going by train isn't always the easy option it's made out to be. But also, you know, it does make me wonder about the north-south divide still. For all the talk of levelling up, we've got the nice Elizabeth line now in London. I benefit every time I come to London by HS2, which runs from Kent through into London. And that's kind of great for people who live in the southeast. But these are routes in Yorkshire, which they're saying are slower than over 100 years ago. And that's appalling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Certainly not progress, is it?
No.
It's pretty grim if you get off the intercity on the West Coast Main Line at Lancaster or Preston, and then have to sort of go into the lakes and
They keep
furnace,
changing.
Cumbria.
For a small
But
journey, it's ridiculous.
It just takes a long time. It's a very slow train. But there you
David,
go.
tell us about Sue Barker. She's decided to retire.
I'm very sad about that because she is a legend, isn't she, at Wimbledon? And she has that extra gravitas of having been a really good player herself. Of course, the BBC took her off A Question of Sport and totally ruined that programme. That was a great programme when she was doing it.
Wasn't that her decision to go?
Apparently, this is her decision. She's 66, but I think that ageism does exist at the BBC, and it seems to me that when people get to about 60, they're not really interested in them anymore. And it's a shame because I don't think age matters. I think if you deliver, and Sue has delivered certainly for a long time, it doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, who is going to take her place and who is going to do it any better than she?
See, I agree. It's the fact that she was a former tennis star in our country that gives her such great. But now she knows everybody as well.
Yes.
She knows absolutely everybody in the tennis world.
And all the history and the players, and she knows everybody. So who would they replace her with? It's a good question, isn't it?
It is a good question.
No, I think some of these are the prejudices of the BBC executives or producers, and I don't think they're really reflected in what the viewers think. Personally, I don't think viewers have got any problem at all with seeing older people reflected on screen and actually welcome.
Well, let's hope not, David.
Well, you're still wet behind the ears. You're okay.
You're just a baby compared to us.
Yes, you're a baby.
I love that. I don't feel like a baby, but I'll take it, David. I'll take it. We're talking of all these sort of issues, diversity quotas and things, Joanna. In the Times, what are we hearing about it?
Yeah, so this is research which has been undertaken by London Business School and Yale School of Management, and they've looked at how so many, like 80%, they're saying, of the top 500 companies in the world make these very public statements about the importance of diversity and inclusivity and how that's integral to their kind of business model. But they're saying that actually the groups that are targeted by a number of these policies, such as women in science and engineering or LGBTQ people or black students, for example, can actually be put off sometimes by these statements because they have concerns that it might mean that you are actually being judged by your identity rather than the quality of the work that you're producing. So they're saying sometimes these things actually backfire and don't have the kind of intention that they're meant to have, where I know certainly I've been in this position before where I've been asked to speak on a panel, for example, at the last minute, and you just get this niggling doubt, you know, are they...
Because you're a woman.
Exactly, and it really knocks your confidence, and you just think, am I just being judged on the basis of who I am rather than what I've actually got to say?
Interesting.
I always think best person for the job. Doesn't matter who it is, what age or what, just the best. Choose, that's how it used to be. Choose the best person for the job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
There's a lot of casting goes on, as it were, you know, like dramatic casting. They think you've got a younger white male, you've got an older black, and they cast somebody according to how it's going to look, rather than, as you say,
it's like a format, isn't it?
It is a format nowadays. Because they have to tick so many boxes.
Can I talk about? It's in the Sun, David. It's a story that I wish we didn't have, because it's Prince William selling the big issue, and he's done it on the QT. And he's been spotted, and someone's taken a picture, and it's gone viral.
Don't you like the story?
I think it's amazing what he's doing. It's the fact that he's done it on the QT and now it's come out. It makes it look like a publicity stunt when it wasn't.
Actually, the Sun has got quite a nice slant on it. The front page says "Just like Diana," and it's about a big issue vendor called Dave Martin. And Dave said that Prince William outsold him with copies of the big issue, but he was delighted because he was using Dave's card payment reader, so the sales were actually credited to him. And I think that's a really nice thing to do, and I think this shows the royal family in their best light. I think that for one of them to turn up in Westminster and sell copies of the big issue, I think that's fantastic.
Oh, I do.
I think that's where they should be.
I think it's an amazing thing,
And frankly, it's his mum who taught him how to do that, because she took the boys out and did that once, didn't she? At least once, and probably many more times.
But you know, the royal family get a lot of criticism, and I think, you know, when they do something like that, and I think the fact that he did it on the QT, OK, it was bound to come out, wasn't it? Somebody was bound to get a smudge charge of it, as we say in the picture of it, and it was bound to. But I think it's come out in a very nice way, and I think, you know, he's a good lad, isn't he? And I think the pair of them, William and Kate, have been a great credit to the royal family. And I think since she took over that role, I don't know who trained her, as it were.
Her mum.
But her mum, yeah. I think she's been absolutely wonderful. I couldn't find any fault with her at all.
Couldn't agree more.
No. When she played that piano at that gig.
Yes.
I mean, I, for some reason, I found that quite
she's
moving.
a good piano player, yeah.
She's accomplished, isn't she?
She is,
And
yeah.
she's walked into the job, and it can't be an easy job in any way, but she seems to be doing it
it's so easy for people to criticise, but I think once in a while we have to say, well done.
Yeah. No,
well done,
fair
Kate.
point. Look, we're out of time. We're being yelled at again, constantly being yelled at this morning, David. Can't tell you. Joanna, David, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Two brothers from Norfolk have discovered a sunken warship that sank over 340 years ago.
Yeah, it's hoped the contents of HMS Gloucester will help shine a light on British maritime history. Our East of England reporter Ed Crawford has the latest now on what could be Norfolk's Mary Rose.
From the Norfolk coast, these are the first images of the Gloucester made public. The secrets of the Gloucester have been hidden under Norfolk's waters for hundreds of years until now.
I could just see looming in the distance big black shapes, shadows if you like, on the seabed. Boomf, really excited, obviously wreckage, and literally by another 4 or 5 metres I'm kneeling on the seabed looking at this amazing shipwreck, just in awe. What was so nice is on the day we found it, Dad was out there as well, with us, so all three of us together.
The brothers couldn't be sure whether they'd found what some are calling Norfolk's Mary Rose.
Well, we were both inspired by the Mary Rose. As youngsters, we saw them lifting the hull, and that always stuck in our mind. And I think that's what led us towards looking for older shipwrecks. I mean, there was certainly a moment heading back in of, wow, this could be the Gloucester. We still need to 100% identify it, and it felt like we found her. But it is what next? It is a light bulb moment. There's lots more to be done, and because we're the only people at that particular moment in time who knew where she was. Very, very special. Diver's dreams.
The brothers spent 4 years and covered thousands of nautical miles to find the Gloucester, but a key moment came with the discovery of the ship's bell.
I saw in the distance just a curved shape. Instantly just knew this is, you'd had a double look at it, and you're kind of trained for, your mind's trained to look for these curves, and instantly knew it's the bell. And Julian was disappearing into the gloom, swimming past the bell. I'll try to stop saying that. And he's disappearing into the gloom. I just grabbed his fin, got him back, and I was so relieved. And then we just shared the moment together.
The brothers have discovered many rare objects, and the discovery of the Gloucester has academics and historians excited about what might be next.
The artefacts that are being rescued are unparalleled in their diversity and in terms of their richness. As a royal vessel with very significant political individuals travelling in style, this offers us a time capsule of how that travel took place.
From childhood dream to reality, the Barnwell brothers have found the Gloucester and thus written themselves in the annals of history.
Two brothers from Norfolk discovering a piece of national history. How does it feel?
Wow, it has been a strange build-up because we've kept it to ourselves and close circle of friends for so long, and to tell the world about it now and the nation is just wow, and it's just, as I said earlier, a diver's dream, and it's so nice to be sharing it. But this is just the beginning of the journey, and there's a lot more fun to be had.
This may well turn out to be Norfolk's Mary Rose, but only time will tell if this 17th century ship can be salvaged from the sea. This is Ed Crawford for GB News.
Absolutely fabulous to see. Great Yarmouth Beach there, looking so brilliant.
Just lovely.
Blue sky, blue sea, sand. Who could ask for anything else?
It does make you feel like you want to go in for a dip.
Yeah, it does. It might be a bit chilly at the
Pop
moment.
your toes in, at least.
Or watch you do it first.
Yeah, OK. Now, new research out today reveals that hard times, including the pandemic, of course, and the cost of living crisis, is actually bringing many communities closer together.
Yeah, according to this report, a third of UK adults say they actually feel closer to their local community since COVID.
Well, we're joined in the studio by Rob Visitina from a community support group for men and Julian McRae, Director of Engage Britain. good to see you both this morning. Why do you think, Rob, that communities are getting closer together? What are you seeing in your groups?
There's a need for it. You know, the guys that I know at the men's shed, they go there because they want to, they need to. They have time on their hands. They don't like the fact that they've got time on their hands. So the men's shed is a place where they get together and they do actually talk. Men do talk.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the men's shed movement is beginning to go all over the country and is an incredible success. But you better explain to people who don't actually know what it is. What do you do?
Imagine the typical garden shed where the man of the house perhaps goes and he gets away from the stresses and strains of life. He's got his lathe, he might do some gardening, he might even do some brewing or listen to music. So imagine a community shed. So rather than the man being on his own, he's there with other men of the community. And that's when they form relationships, they form a camaraderie, and they do talk. And from there, they do talk about issues. I call it health by stealth.
Yeah, they probably do it while they're doing something with their hands as well, don't they?
Yeah.
Because men like to do that. They don't just sort of sit down and talk like women do. They like to sort of be doing something, knocking a nail into something.
That's absolutely right.
That's when they talk.
The phrase...
I like the way she's telling us three, Jen, so you're right there.
Well, I'm the mother of sons and I'm also the daughter of a dad who did that, and they met in the garage all the time.
Absolutely. We call it shoulder to shoulder. So what we say is women talk face to face, but men talk shoulder to shoulder whilst engaged. Yeah. So they might be on the workbench, fixing a broken chainsaw, talking to each other, but not looking each other directly eye to eye.
Oh, that's very good. Look, in terms of Julian and Engage Britain, what do you... I mean, do you think there is a real sense that whatever we're seeing developing here in terms of inter-community support is going to be maintained for some period of time?
Well, it was so necessary when we had the lockdown. So some of those relationships that Rob was talking about, you know, people contacted each other on the phone, they were coming round. There's some great stories about people going round at the end of lockdown, people who got very isolated, saying, come along, you need to get out, you need to be back in the community again. And we're seeing it now again with the cost of living coming up. You know, communities themselves sorting out issues, supporting each other, that kind of resilience that we want across our country. And that's why we're doing this, working with loads of different groups across the country like Rob's, just to highlight the importance of this for the health of our nation.
Yeah, because if that is true, that people are beginning to feel a sense of community again, we remember at the very beginning of lockdown, don't we, that other people were doing others' shopping for them and then leaving the shopping at the gate or whatever. If that is there, we mustn't let it die, must we?
No, well, exactly right. And there's different things that have gone on. For a lot of us, it might have been the WhatsApp group on the street, but for some people, you know, one of the things is in Northern Ireland, in Fermanagh, very rural communities, people were really isolated during lockdown. And now you look at sort of places like Hartlepool, where some of the IT to support the kids at school, it was about the IT specialists in the local area getting together to help, you know, the mums who didn't really have the confidence to use the IT to support their kids. All of that needs support. We need to get behind it.
It's interesting that you're both here talking about it just after the Jubilee weekend, where, of course, one of the key messages from Her Majesty was about building communities.
Yeah, and it's so powerful. The amount we can do together is huge, and not waiting for government to come up with some scheme to say we're going to sort out your issues. It's about people and communities.
But there will nevertheless, I guess, be people watching this at home saying, oh, I wish I could belong to something like that, or I wish I knew where there was a shed near me, or something else that Engage Britain can engage you in. How do they find out whether there is something local to them?
Yeah, and it varies throughout the country. I mean, you know, just what people do and how it goes. And one of the things we're looking at is how do you make that better and stronger? How do you find, there's a load of stuff in Coventry where they have some organisations which are all about people who want to set something up. How do you get support to them? How do you help them meet the other people in the community who likewise want to get something off the ground?
I was going to ask you about that with the sheds, because I get that you get men there and they're working and talking, and that's really positive. Yep. How do you get them there in the first place?
Do you know what? It's often a partner, a son, a daughter that will read perhaps on our website, Men's Sheds Cymru, and they will say, "Oh, this sounds great. This will be perfect for Grandad. This will be perfect for Dad or Uncle." So as often as someone else, but also notice the GPs. They're also referring men to men's sheds a lot more. You know, post-pandemic, we're seeing a lot of that.
Actually, that's a good point. When I just asked about how do you find out if there's something local to you, maybe ask your GP if you can get to see them. Ask your GP or somebody like that, or I don't know, maybe even at their local chemist or something like that, local shop. But sometimes I was going to say one of the ways to get men into men's sheds is tools, because very often I was talking about a lathe or something. A lot of people want to do a job like that, but they haven't got the specialist tools needed. But somebody else has, and you can borrow it. And that's what you do a lot of in the men's shed.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of tools in the men's shed. And you know what? There are lots of guys with skills, and they're more than happy to share those skills. They want to. They feel useful. Perhaps they've retired, and once you leave work, some men feel useless. But being able to pass on those skills in the men's sheds, it's good for them and it's good for the people that
Do you know what? I found that, and I'm not a man, but I found that because I'm a model railway nut, and I come across problems with my model railway that I just cannot solve. And in the end, I went along to one of those big exhibitions, and there were people there who are bend over backwards to help you do something, tinker or something with. And they said, come along to our club because we have evenings where we're all helping each other do that. And that's just with model railways.
You see, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there is a lot going on, and you've got to find out where it is. But it's Engage Britain and men's sheds.
Yes.
I mean, you're particularly Cymru, but men's sheds is all over.
All over the UK, all over the world.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yes.
Quite fancy a bit.
Brilliant movement. Really fantastic.
Yeah. Julian, Rob, thank you very much indeed. Just reminds you a bit, remember you used to go to those parties? You have those parties quite the same now, but it's always the women who'd sit in the lounge with a glass of wine, and the men all go into the kitchen, where I guess they can stand in a line, drink beer and talk shoulder to shoulder.
Or very often they go into the garage or the shed.
Yeah.
Because that used to be the age-old nag, didn't it? Women were always saying, what do you do in that shed? Anything,
Get away.
I suppose. Yes. Yeah.
OK,
absolutely.
Talking of communities, it's time to head out to one of yours now, on your doorstep.
So it's time now to find out whether one of our intrepid reporters has landed up on your doorstep this morning.
So let's head north of the border, Glasgow, to be precise, with Davy Dulson. Morning, Davy.
Yeah, good morning. Back in Glasgow's West End, and I have to say the weather's been kind to us. Not often you can say that in Glasgow. Usually it's pretty wet. So I'm going to go in here to the Morning Glory Cafe, which I have to say is very, very nice indeed. And I'm just going to meet the owner. Joanna?
Hello.
You obviously own the business. What's it been like with the cost of living?
Things are significantly harder. We're not quite sure when it's going to get a little bit better, but I think the next few years are going to be nothing close to fun.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Everyone's facing a really tough time with, not just, fuel, but with, in terms of bills going up. So it must be difficult. It must impact in a business like this.
Oh, absolutely massively. And, we really are looking, there's kind of rumour of some kind of small business reductions, but as things stand, we've not seen anything, so we're just waiting to see if anything comes through.
And what's it going to be like across? Because this is not just the only business you own, is it?
No, it's not. We have a restaurant as well and another cafe, and to be honest, it's really tough for all of them, especially, just the cost of living going up in general. A lot of people have much less money to come out, so we really need to see if they're going to keep coming.
Are you going to have you seen people maybe spending less? Is that what you say?
I think we're fortunate in that people still want to go out for special occasions and they still want to feel like life is good, but I don't know how long that's going to last.
It's going to be difficult. And what about supplies? Because that's another issue as well, and actually getting supplies as well, because I'm sure that the cost of those has gone up as well.
For sure, and even just actually the supply chain's been so disrupted in general. It's kind of really having to think on your feet more, so the menus are having to become a lot more versatile, a lot more adaptable, which just means you're having to put more hours into planning everything. So, it really is just going up everywhere.
Have you thought about maybe not opening some days of the week, or is that something that's not crossed your head?
We're actually doing exactly that for our restaurant. We're starting to just open at 5 through the week. It's just generally a mix of loads of different things, but we really need to kind of try and just, utilise the business as best we can, otherwise we don't know where we'll be in 6 months.
Excellent, thank you very much.
No, not at all.
So I'm going to have to go and try one of these cakes over here. Excuse me a second, can I just try one of these? Is that possible, sir? Yes, sir. That one there. Have to try one of these. It's absolutely superb. You can see the range that they've got here. Quite excellent. Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to try that. There we go. It's a tough job. Somebody's got to do it, but there we go. Morning Glory Cafe still doing business, still doing well, despite the cost of living rise.
Yeah. Oh, go on then, David. What is it good?
He can't speak. His
Very
mouth's
good.
full.
There you go.
I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's very, very nice.
Hey,
It doesn't matter.
Don't look at gift muffin in the mouth.
No, lovely stuff. Davey, thank you very much indeed. Oh, that is the sort of job, because they will give you A free cake and a free cup of tea.
The odd freebie is rather nice.
Yeah. We're talking about smoking bans a lot. It came up in the papers, like banning smoking in pub gardens and things, beer gardens. Rich said having a set area for smokers won't work. Depends which way the wind is blowing. Anywhere can be downwind.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Caroline says, normally a country where smoking was far higher in numbers and not so socially despised. I think she's living in Spain. During COVID, it was banned on all the bar terraces and is one of the few rules that's still in force and expected to become a permanent ban. It's brilliant for non-smokers, but not so pleasant to see all the smokers out on the streets instead. I'm a smoker, have never smoked in my own house, but living in Spain, I always enjoy a cigarette with my vino on the terrace.
Harry says, it's always fascinated me how drinking is more socially acceptable than smoking. When I don't know anyone who had 10 cigarettes go home and terrorised their family with abusive and violent behaviour.
It's true. But they do land themselves on the NHS's doorstep, cost a fortune for cancer treatments. I don't know, with the smoking thing, it would just be better if we'd never started.
Yeah, it would be. Walter Raleigh, wasn't it, who brought over tobacco?
I think it was.
Judith says on saving water, maybe it's time to put water meters in all properties. I think they are in most, I think, now. But as for turning the tap off when cleaning one's teeth, I've done this since 1976 when we had a water shortage. I agree. It's having the tap just running.
I'm a bit of a sinner there. I don't know why. Yeah, there's something about running water sort of helps you brush your teeth, but presumably that means you just have to turn it on and off all the time.
Yeah.
On, brush, and then when you want to do it,
Rinse.
and then again. And then...
Yeah.
Depends how long you take brushing your teeth, I suppose.
Yeah, and have a wee in the shower. It's the other way. No, it saves a lot of water.
I wasn't expecting that.
No,
were you?
it's true. There was a big campaign in one country about that, so it's the thing to do.
Just before 9 o'clock on a Friday morning.
Well,
did we need to know that?
People might be getting ready. There you go. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Top stories heading your way in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio. On digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices. With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Friday the 10th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
Oh, just in case you didn't know, bet you did, we're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV and your radio and online. So in fact, you can watch us just about anywhere.
Yeah, while you're sipping vino on a terrace. Oh, how lovely. In Spain.
Don't be getting envy.
No, I've definitely got envy, but keep your views coming in and tell us where you are and where you are watching us. Right, here's what we've got for you this morning. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has unveiled plans to allow benefits to be put towards mortgages in England. But how did that speech go down with you?
2 British-born Ukrainian soldiers have been captured by pro-Russian forces in Ukraine, and they've been found guilty of terrorist offences and sentenced to death. As the families are asking for government support, should the UK be ready to become more involved?
And how is Britney Spears coping after having her wedding crashed by her ex? We'll have all the latest showbiz news at the end of the show.
And of course, we want to hear from you this morning. We're going to run through a lot of your views in just a second. If you want to get involved, it's GBViews at gbnews.uk.
And of course, don't forget you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest, the big stories, everything that we are talking about this morning.
A lot of you are talking about the government's plans, the Prime Minister's plans on this right to buy and using benefits for houses, using benefits to get your mortgage and all that sort of thing, instead of paying your rent. Andy says, morning Andy, I have no problem with right to buy, but I strongly object to taxpayers' money funding it.
Well, we've all got to get stuck in somewhere, I suppose, haven't we? Taxpayers' money is used for everything. Caroline in Bristol says, I think one of the critical issues with the housing crisis is houses that are too big get built, not small ones, 2-bed flats, and then they get bought up by private landlords and investors and then rented out for profit. It's not that there are too few houses, it's too few people own them.
Yeah.
Plus, what about second holiday homes?
It's a fair point. But there's all this talk about more houses. They want 300,000 houses a year building. That's been the target for a long time. I don't think we've ever actually met it. Marel, I'm not sure, says, if anyone thinks we need more housing, they should visit our corner of Essex. We're disappearing under a sea of concrete, and most of the building is on farmland and greenfield sites. We'll end up with thousands of new houses, no infrastructure and nowhere to grow our food.
There has to be the infrastructure, and that almost has to be put in first. But, I mean, they've got to be built somewhere, haven't they?
Oh, I'll tell you what, I like this from Audrey. Because this drives me mad, Audrey, some of this. Councils should go back to building good, affordable council houses. Councils need to refocus and stop doing these no-value projects like visual art structures. I couldn't agree more. I like a bit of, you know...
I like a bit of, art,
well, I do,
town art.
But sometimes some of it just pops up and you think, what the...
And when you look at... And sometimes it's very good, but when you look into the cost of it, it's unbelievable.
Like a cube that costs £50,000 or something.
Yeah, how come? Betty in Dorset says, in 1985, I joined a local authority housing department during the right to buy, and our local authority's ownership went down from 24,000 properties to fewer than 12,000. That's the effect it had. Most of the money from the sale of those properties went to central government. There will always be the need for social housing, and unless the properties that are sold are then replaced, I believe that selling off social housing is a bad idea. And you see, a lot of what Boris announced yesterday was also talking about selling off housing association rental properties.
Yeah.
And a lot of housing associations do real good. They have very affordable rented accommodation. Why take those out of the rented market? Why not just build new for those who want to buy?
I don't know.
Why take housing association properties out of the housing association?
But I suppose they're cheaper for a kick-off because you do get a discount on them, and a significant discount at times, can be sort of 40, 50% at times. And I guess people saying, this is my home, I want to own it, rather than saying, I want to own it,
you get out and you buy a house. My first property was a housing association flat, and it was lovely. But, you know, any idea that I might have wanted to buy it and then take it off somebody else like me who needed that foot on the first rung of the ladder.
You see, Gary is in Leeds. He says, some of us have no choice but to rely on benefits. I can't work because of ill health. I used to own my own home, but now I rent and pay more renting a 1-bed flat than I did a 3-bed bungalow. I'd love to own my own place again. I think it's a great idea.
There's got to be something done, hasn't there? But are they doing the right thing? And do you have any faith in what Boris announced yesterday? Love to hear your views.
Certainly.
Still time to get them in. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, a group of charities, action groups and unions are bringing a legal challenge to the Home Office today ahead of the first flight taking migrants to Rwanda.
Yeah, cross-channel asylum seekers have been given notice that they will be processed in Rwanda and given the opportunity to rebuild their lives in safety in a partnership brokered between Priti Patel and the Rwandan government.
Well, let's talk to Paul Hawkins, who's down at the High Court for us this morning. Paul, what's the latest on this, and when are we going to start hearing those arguments?
Later this morning, the court's just opened behind me. We think the hearing is due to start round about 10 o'clock, and this is effectively an 11th hour bid to get an injunction to stop that flight leaving to Rwanda on Tuesday. So there's a decent chance we're going to get a result on this, that there is going to be a decision by the High Court on this today, because it's Friday. The court obviously doesn't sit over the weekend, and then Tuesday the flight leaves. So this is action brought by two campaign groups, Care for Calais and Detention Action, along with the Public and Commercial Services Union, and four asylum seekers. They are represented by lawyers who are arguing that this policy, and I'll put it in their words, puts people's lives at risk and is an unlawful way to treat asylum seekers prior to deportation and once sent to Rwanda. They're arguing, for example, that Rwanda itself isn't as safe a country as the government claims it is, that the government is breaking its international obligations, and that effectively this policy is unlawful. And they're also hoping, and they've asked for, that if there is a decision on an injunction, that it doesn't just apply to those four asylum seekers, that it applies to stopping the flight completely. We know that there will be more asylum seekers than the number of four on that flight, and so they're saying stop the flight, don't just put an injunction in that prevents these four asylum seekers alone from having to get on that flight. Now, the Home Office is saying that the whole point of this policy is to stop people trafficking. It says anyone the Home Office considers has taken a dangerous, unnecessary or illegal journey to the UK would meet the criteria for removal, apart from lone migrant children who are exempt. So we're not just talking about people who take the boats across the channel. Anyone whose journey to the UK is dangerous, unnecessary or illegal. Of course, that does mean, though, that most of those journeys, as we know, have been across the channel. The Home Office has said that this is part of its efforts to overhaul the UK's broken, that's its words, asylum seeker system, I should say. And the government says it's committed to working with Rwanda to offer safety to those seeking asylum, and those recognised as refugees will be given an opportunity to rebuild their lives. It's a controversial policy. This is an 11th hour bid. Critics of the government say perhaps it has actually anticipated these kind of legal challenges, and that the way it wants to pitch it is that, look, the lawyers are stopping us from doing what we want to do, which is carrying out the will of the people, as they would say. This is a popular policy, and that the lawyers are getting in the way of us trying to deal with the problem of people smugglers.
OK. Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It's interesting, we were talking about tattoos just a few minutes ago, and we had as our guest Professor of Mathematics at Oxford University, absolutely covered in tattoos. Very much talking about the fact that nowadays, is it a surprise that it's even something that we need to discuss? Bernard says, I'm a retired detective, and before DNA and other modern technologies, tattoos were a boon in helping identify criminals.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, bet they were. And even now, actually, sort of gang tattoos and things in some parts of the world are...
They often turn up as something in whodunnits and things, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
Tony says, I had 6 tattoos when I was serving in the Royal Navy from the age of 16 to 22. 1 a year there, Tony. I then served for 30 years in the police. I'm now 60. During the last year, I had 4 more tattoos, and I'm going to be having more. I like the art, the skills of the artist, and I find it quite therapeutic when having them done.
Why were tattoos very big in the Navy? It's just a very big naval thing, isn't it? They were, weren't they?
Yeah, I don't know, but you see, that's what always put me off tattoos, when those sort of the anchors.
Everybody would say, hello, sailor.
But you know what I mean? Those style of tattoos, and they used to get very, very faded and things. The inks now are much better and the colours last and things.
Yes, I suppose there was always a risk in the olden days, wasn't there?
Paul says, I agree, Dr. Tony, who we had then, Dr. Tom. So I like his tattoos.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's all about taste. Now, I've got to be honest, I didn't particularly like Tom's tattoos. Didn't like and piercings aren't my thing. But I didn't particularly like his style of tattoos. It's not what I would have done, but it's all about personal choice.
What do you go for? You go for poetry, don't you?
I've got a bit of poetry on a leg. And then I've got flowers here, and then I have like a geometric design down here, which I had this unique. I had it all designed, but it's whatever floats your boat.
What's floating your boat for the next one then?
I'm getting Oh, I'm not going to say.
Oh, I wanted to hear that. Tell me private.
I'll tell you. I don't know who to say.
No, I know. I was going to say, would you... I mean, it's interesting. Dave says, could we ask if any viewers regret their tattoos in later years? And you see, if you go for lovey-dovey, your name and the other name or whatever of your partner, and then something goes wrong with the relationship, would you always regret that and try and get it removed? And I gather having it removed is quite a difficult process.
Yes. Yeah. Christine says, I don't like tattoos. What happens if you have a cancerous mole? You wouldn't see it.
You would. I think you'd know your body well enough, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Paul in Fareham says, I've owned a tattoo and piercing studio since 1993. And for the last 5 years, piercing has been majorly accepted throughout the working world. Long may it continue. We were talking about it because Virgin Atlantic have told their cabin crew that it is now acceptable to be able to have them visible.
Roll your sleeves up.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes, exactly, and have them visible. Why not, I suppose?
Yeah, I don't see the problem with it. And it's about
I suppose that's the next thing, is what is acceptable, as long as they're nice tattoos, I was going to say.
Well, as long as not...
Because some look a bit rude and garish and a bit off-putting.
Well, as long as they're not rude, I suppose that would be the thing. But I think it is personal choice, and say I'm not into the piercing thing. I don't really like that.
I'm not.
But that's for me. I don't want it doing. But if anyone else wants to.
But what would you think of a newsreader or a TV presenter with visible tattoos? I mean, where is acceptable on the face? On the forehead, and what about piercings? Visible piercings. I mean, I've got visible piercings, you could say, because I've got pierced ears. So I suppose, that's always been totally acceptable.
Dawn Neeson
where do you
has
draw
them
the
running
line?
all the way up her ear.
She does, yeah.
Very right on.
But through the nose, through the lip, would you accept your news being brought to you by somebody wearing that? It's interesting, isn't it? It's a matter of taste. And it's when things start to change. In my day, when I first started reading the news yonks ago, you were not allowed to wear anything dangly, no dangly earrings at all. That was absolutely out,
Right.
Because it's distracting.
You see,
we're allowed to wear tiny little pierced things.
But even up until very recently, I was always told what to wear, and you'd get told off if you didn't like something.
Well, there used to be rules about moustaches and beards as well on men in reading the news.
Yeah.
So, society, I suppose, always has to change.
I mean, I like the fact it's like on Sunday when I was out in... near Wolverhampton in South Staffordshire, and I put my dicky bow on, which I bought especially for the occasion.
You did, and you looked very smart.
If I'd have worked somewhere else, I would have been told off for that.
Yeah, because you were serious news journalist, and you shouldn't be wearing your Union Jack bow tie on Jubilee Sunday.
Yeah, rather than just... So there's some freedoms here. I mean, if I didn't want to wear a tie, I don't suppose I'd get told off. I'd probably just do it. I quite like a tie.
Aidan comes in not wearing a tie, and he looks very good.
He does.
But you wouldn't do it, would you?
I don't think so. Just because I think a tie's quite smart for this type of job.
Fascinating.
I don't wear one at home.
Up to date with our sartorial style.
Yes, I didn't know I had any. There you go.
You've got a style, I suppose, haven't you? Depends what others think of it. Shall we bring you up to date with what's in the news this morning, just in case you've woken up and joining us now?
Yeah, and it's some pretty grim news, actually. The Foreign Secretary says death sentences handed to 2 British men captured whilst fighting in Ukraine are a sham judgment with no legitimacy. Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner have been accused of being mercenaries by a pro-Russian rebel court in the separatist region of Donetsk. A Moroccan national was also sentenced to death.
Now, the Labour leader is going to meet political parties in Northern Ireland today amid the row over the post-Brexit trading agreement. The DUP is refusing to form a power-sharing executive in protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol. And Sir Keir Starmer is expected to call for a compromise and negotiation to end that deadlock.
MPs have criticised the government's plans to burn £4 billion worth of unusable personal protective equipment, PPE, that doesn't meet NHS standards. The Public Accounts Committee has accused the Department of Health of wasting 75% of the £12 billion it spent on PPE in the first year of the pandemic because of faulty kits and inflated prices.
UK military intelligence shows medical infrastructure in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol is on the verge of collapse. The Ministry of Defence says the eastern port city is now at risk of a major cholera outbreak. A few isolated cases were reported last month, and Russia is reportedly struggling to provide basic services to the population in those occupied territories. As if things weren't bad enough for those left in Mariupol.
I mean, something like cholera, though, I mean, that's absolutely horrific, isn't it, if there's an outbreak of that?
And will that be used as a weapon of war?
Oh, can you imagine?
Is it already being used?
I mean, this is where they need to start allowing safe corridors to let aid agencies in and things to try and sort that out. Cholera is caused by, I mean, it's sewage and all that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yes, it's basic lack of hygiene. Yeah.
Terrible, terrible.
Let's move on to a much more uplifting story for you. Two brothers from Norfolk have discovered a sunken warship that sank, actually, over 340 years ago.
Amazing story. It's hoped the contents of HMS Gloucester will shine a light on British maritime history. Our East of England reporter Ed Crawford has the latest now on what could be Norfolk's Mary Rose.
From the Norfolk coast, these are the first images of the Gloucester made public. The secrets of the Gloucester have been hidden under Norfolk's waters for hundreds of years until now.
I could just see looming in the distance big black shapes, shadows if you like, on the seabed. Boomf, really excited, obviously wreckage. And literally by another 4 or 5 metres, I'm kneeling on the seabed, looking at this amazing shipwreck, just in awe. What was so nice is on the day we found it, Dad was out there as well, with us, so all three of us together.
The brothers couldn't be sure whether they'd found what some are calling Norfolk's Mary Rose.
Well, we were both inspired by the Mary Rose. As youngsters, we saw them lifting the hull, and that always stuck in our mind. And I think that's what led us towards looking for older shipwrecks. I mean, there was certainly a moment heading back in of, wow, this could be the Gloucester. We still need to 100% identify it, and it felt like we found her. But it is what next? It is a light bulb moment. There's lots more to be done, and because we're the only people at that particular moment in time who knew where she was. Very, very special. Divers' dreams.
The brothers spent 4 years and covered thousands of nautical miles to find the Gloucester, but a key moment came with the discovery of the ship's bell.
I saw in the distance just a curved shape. Instantly just knew this is, you'd had a double look at it, and you're kind of trained for, your mind's trained to look for these curves, and instantly knew it's the bell. And Julian was disappearing into the gloom, swimming past the bell. I'll try to stop saying that. He was disappearing into the gloom. I just grabbed his fin, got him back, and I was so relieved. And then we just shared the moment together.
The brothers have discovered many rare objects, and the discovery of the Gloucester has academics and historians excited about what might be next.
The artefacts that are being rescued are unparalleled in their diversity and in terms of their richness. As a royal vessel with very significant political individuals travelling in style, this offers us a time capsule of how that travel took place.
From childhood dream to reality, the Barnwell brothers have found the Gloucester and thus written themselves in the annals of history.
Two brothers from Norfolk discovering a piece of national history. How does it feel?
Wow, it has been a strange build-up because we've kept it to ourselves and close circle of friends for so long, and to tell the world about it now and the nation is just wow, and it's just, as I said earlier, a diver's dream, and it's so nice to be sharing it. But this is just the beginning of the journey, and there's a lot more fun to be had.
This may well turn out to be Norfolk's Mary Rose, but only time will tell if this 17th century ship can be salvaged from the sea. This is Ed Crawford for GB News.
Be amazing, man.
Wonderful stuff. I remember the uprising of the Mary Rose.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And 350-year-old HMS Gloucester. How wonderful would that be?
Quite something to see. Let's hope it all pays off. I'd love to see it. Anyway, look, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break, but then Stephanie Tecci is here. It's going to be Showbiz Crackers. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
All right, 9:22. Guess who's here? Morning, Stephanie Tetchy.
Good morning.
Oh, let's talk Britney.
Well, yesterday was the big wedding people were waiting for. Britney's finally married her fiancé, Sam Asghari. And as in true Hollywood style, there was a bit of drama yesterday.
What happened?
Because her first husband, Jason Alexander, who she was married to for all of 55 hours before their marriage got annulled, he gate-crashed the wedding. He scaled up Britney's home, he attacked security guards, and he tried to gate-crash it to say he is her first husband and she is his first wife. He's been arrested now and he's set to be prosecuted, but obviously that did dampen Britney's day of what should have been a great day.
Because when I first heard about this, I thought, is that a choreographed, way to get into the newspapers? But by the sound of it, he just did it off his own back.
Yeah, and he seems like he has a bit of a criminal past and he's been arrested on quite a few times. But what makes it a bit more scary / entertaining was that he recorded this live for Instagram Live. So he was showing his followers his attempt of what he was doing. But Britney, luckily, is married. She wore a lovely Versace gown, so...
Is she all right now? Because I know there are still so many worries about her mental health and her fragility.
I think her fans are just happy that she's been freed from the conservatorship. But on social media, it is questionable on the kind of posts that Britney puts up where she could be seen sometimes practically naked, and some of the things she talks about. She's gone through a miscarriage, and you just think, how well is Britney,
Well, let's hope she is pulling it together. We can talk, actually, Stephanie, to a Britney Spears superfan, Jack Strange, who joins us now. Jack, really good to see you this morning. Look, do you think that Britney is, and hopefully with this marriage as well, actually you're settling down a little bit?
Yeah, I'm really happy for her. This is my, Jubilee royal wedding, if you will. I think it's just great that she's finally found some happiness and married somebody she is in love with.
Good. I mean, I know you're a super fan and you've been part of the social media campaign. You actually played a part in getting her freed from her conservatorship, as you say. So you see it as her coming out and being free again. And I know you went to Las Vegas and saw her, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, it was 2016, peak Vegas. Yeah, I was front row. It was best night of my life. It was great.
So why are you a super fan? What is so amazing about Britney to you?
Do you know what? I think it's just, I come from a generation where she was very much there. She was top of her game. I think I just grew up on Britney. And then I just remember when she came out with Give Me More in 2007, I was just very much championing her doing that. And I just loved her the way she came back. I loved her comeback. I just loved how she just, she went through a really tough time, and that was evident with the conservatorship as well, 13 years of that. But I'm just really happy for her and glad that she's moved past that. I guess that's why I just like to see her happy.
But Jack, do you worry about Britney now? I know she's free and we're all celebrating her freedom, but I follow her on Instagram and some of her posts are quite questionable, and most of the time she's nearly half naked in them.
But would you question why Kim Kardashian is naked or why Hilary Duff was naked on the magazine cover of Women's Health? Would you question that?
We're going to have to leave it there because we're being yelled at again to end the programme right now. But Jack, thank you very much for joining us, and maybe this is something we should take up tomorrow.
Oh, yes. You should.
Yeah. You're going to be with us tomorrow?
Obviously. Where else I would want to be.
Well, we're going to put a good 10-minute spot in.
Yeah,
There
we
you
need
go.
more time. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We will see you tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. But up next, Tom Harwood has your briefing.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A bright start for many of us, but a breezy start, and that wind will pick up further during the rest of the day with showers developing. Those showers will be frequent and heavy for Scotland and Northern Ireland near this low pressure. This is an unusually deep area of low pressure for the time of year. We don't often see this sort of thing in early June, so unseasonably strong winds expected during the rest of the day and into tomorrow. Also, a few showers around first thing. East Anglia, southern England sees 1 or 2, but the most frequent showers will develop across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy at times with hail and thunder in places, and that strengthening wind. A breezy day for many of us, but the wind strongest across exposed coasts of western Scotland, reaching gale force here, 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Feeling cool where that wind is at its strongest, but further south and east, a reasonably warm day, still the potential for low 20s, even 24 Celsius in London, and staying mostly dry with sunny spells here, clearing skies in the south and the east overnight. Further showers perhaps for parts of Wales and western England, but again, the most frequent showers or more prolonged rain for parts of Scotland, especially towards the northwest. And again, a blustery night to come. But of course, that will keep the temperatures up, so a relatively mild start to the weekend. And again, another bright start for central and eastern parts of the country. Quite quickly, the cloud will build and we'll see further showers developing. I think more showers to come across Wales, central and northern England compared to Friday. And a stronger breeze, that breeze bouncing over the hills of Wales and northern England. But the strongest winds, the most frequent showers, will again affect Scotland and Northern Ireland. And it will feel a bit cooler as a result. Sunday looks a little less windy, a little less showery, but still some blustery showers around